Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. The multi-story building of the Adventurers Academy High School in Tokyo. A flash of explosion appeared. The fallen guy drove on the ground. The schoolboy smiled broadly and falsely apologized, saying that he had noticed him. He was really killed by the simplest magic. He was incredible. The hero closed his eyes and tried to get up. Getting to his feet, he asked if this was not enough. Wiping his face, the hero angrily said that he promised that he would give it back. He bought what he asked for. In his hand was a bag, a picture of a burger. The hooligan smiled, saying that this is a fresh burger with beef tenderloin. Only 50 pieces are sold in the canteen per day. He bought it. The guys looked into the bag, and he continued, where the drinks are, he could take care of it. A fireball appeared in the palm of his hand, and the guy said that he would punish him. And then he threw the ball at the hero. On one knee, the bully grinned, saying that he knew he was surprisingly weak. The angry girl rested her hand on her side and asked what they were doing. The heroes recognized Rina and said that she was on the disciplinary committee. The phone hit the hero in the face. A shout was heard for him to be happy that they finished for today. The phone fell to the ground. The girl ran to Haruto and called out to him. Sitting down anxiously, she asked if he was okay. The guy replied that she should stop. She would also be bullied if she communicated with him. The heroine sadly lowered her gaze and said that she did not really care about it. The guy wiped his face and said that they would not survive here. He walked away, continuing that if they communicated like in childhood. The upset girl looked after him. Clouds floated in the sky above the school. The heroes walked along the corridor and whispered that this guy was a student of a special recruitment. He was completely ungifted with magic. How did he enter such a prestigious school? They say there was an error in the grading system. Haruto listened to this, straining his eyes shut, and heard someone suggest that maybe someone else was taking the exam for him. The hero was holding a broken phone with a photo of his family, and thought that he would really not like to admit it. But he could not refute these rumors, how a student who studies so poorly ended up in a prestigious school. One day, his parents said that he would be a special student even if he wanted to ask them why. The guy looked at the flying plane and thought that it would be too late. He looked intently ahead. Standing by the window, the guy wondered that maybe he should have died with them that day too. Opening the closet door, the guy reflected that he had been accepted into the school without any magical abilities, so he had only one way to successfully complete his studies. Haruto had a sheathed blade behind him, and he thought it was to become a swordsman. Now that magic dominates society, his useless skills can only be used in close combat. Being the sole survivor of his family and a burden on all missions, he earned a nickname. The boy's face was hidden by a shadow. He remembered that his name was the God of Plague. A 3-story building with balconies appeared. The guy entered the code at the door. Suddenly he noticed something in surprise. A black envelope protruded from the crack in the mailbox, and he thought it was a letter. Haruto sat in an armchair, examining the find. The letter had a turquoise sticker, and he thought that there were no stamps, and the name of the sender too. A drop of sweat was dripping down his cheek. The hero decided that he would try to open it. His fingers took hold of the sticker. The blue light reflected in the guy's eye. It was dazzlingly bright. Haruto stared in surprise at the beams of light spreading out. There was a flash, and the envelope fell down. The guy's eyes were closed. Then he opened them. He stood as if in water reflecting space, and asked where he was. From the fallen drop, circles began to appear on the water. The hero opened his mouth in surprise. The transparent figure was smiling, saying that it was 2054 on the Western calendar. The hero looked ahead in surprise, hearing the assumption that he was a 16-year-old Haruto. A weightless blue figure appeared nearby. The hero confirmed. From the blue figure, words were heard that his name was Haruto. The hero yawned open his mouth when he heard that he was himself from the future. There was only a smile on his face. The creature continued that he had sent him this letter from the future. Haruto from the future approached the hero and said that in 10 years he would become a magician who could manipulate time and space. Still smiling, he said that it would not be soon, however. Haruto from the present was amazed to hear that therefore, he had decided to teach him now. He would become the greatest magus. Frowning, the hero thought what he was carrying. The spirit raised his hand and told the guy that he knew that he was a skeptic. But it was better for him to see once than hear 100 times. Let him do what he said. He had to enter the F-rank Imperial Garden dungeon. Alone, he would contact him after that. There was a fencing tape at the gate of the house. Haruto walked down the corridor of the dungeon and said that there was nothing useful in the cleared dungeons. And holding the envelope in his hand, he said that if it was some kind of hoax, he understood what would happen. A voice was heard from the black envelope that yes, he could burn this letter, let him go straight to the end, then turn right. The hero grimaced in displeasure. Behind him, a whirlwind of air flew down the corridor. Haruto stopped by the wall and said that there was a dead end. Could he burn it now? The voice replied that he should put the letter in a crevice in the wall. The guy exhaled. He inserted the envelope into the gap between the bricks. A luminous line appeared on the wall. And then the bricks parted, forming a passage. The guy stopped in front of him. Stepping inside into the darkness, he thought that he had never heard of the hidden route. The bright light forced the hero to close one eye. In front of him was a large crystal encased in chains. Stopping at the shining stone, the hero heard that it was the skill stone. He had seen it for the first time. Let him touch it and get a new skill. The hero pursed his lips excitedly. His face reflected off the polished stone, his voice apologizing. The crystal turned red and cracked. Violet rays spread all over the walls. A passage has formed in the ceiling. Next to it hovered a black cube. The cube became a fragment of the pattern on the stone. Debris flew in all directions. The brick hovered against the wall. The same was on the other side. They were flying in the air. The stones began to look like a hand. In the rising dust I could see someone's silhouette. The hero opened his mouth. The pink cube glowed. It was an eye on the body of a tall monster. The creature consisted of laid-out stones. Looking at him in surprise, the guy realized that it was a golem. His face seemed to have become an outline. A pink attack beam flew forward. He hit the guy, who screamed. Looking at the stone golem, the brown-haired man thought about what was happening now. He sat by the broken wall and thought. He was deceived. He was hot. His whole body was burning. He was losing consciousness. The light of the phone could be seen in the bloody eye. He thought he would die. There was a picture of his family on the screen, and he thought of his father, mother, and sister, saying that he would finally see them. Light was spreading from the black envelope. He asked if everything was all right. His hand fell to the ground. The hero from the future turned to the guy, saying that he was not coping with school and would soon die a senseless death from excessive credulity. Haruto's eyes widened when he heard the question. He was fine with that. He remembered the taunting schoolchildren and thought that it was a terrible life in which there was nothing good. There were bruises on the guy's face. He thought that this was just his life. He convinced himself that there was nothing he could do about it. Remembering standing by the window, Haruto thought he had given up. He remembered his family. The guy angrily knitted his eyebrows and said that of course he was not satisfied with this. The golem waved his hand, and the voice advised him to resist and survive in spite of it. A huge monster was approaching the hero, who heard the order to change his life. The attack drove the guy into the ground. He thought that he would not mess with him in such a place. A shining line appeared. The system reported a hidden quest: time and space mage unshakable spirit meets the requirements. Next to the huge hand of the stone golem, notifications appeared that death had been cancelled. The physical body would return to its previous state. Glowing circles appeared near the hero's eye. He said that he would survive. A dazzling blue beam flew forward. Lightning came from the guy's body. They surrounded his hand. The hero who stood up lowered his head. Haruto's eyes glowed, and the system reported that the concept of space-time magic had been acquired. The blue crystal was chained. Then it shattered into small fragments. A blinding blue flash appeared. She encountered the body of a stone golem. The guy's silhouette was reflected in the pink glass. There were blue lightning bolts around his body. They spread from his back. They surrounded the blade in a sheath. The guy stood in a confident pose. Smoke was rising all around. The system reported that space-time magic had been acquired. Acceleration, physical rewind, stop chain had been acquired. Looking at his palms, the guy learned that in the passive skill of the Space and Time Magus Level 1, unlocking potential plus 30% characteristic obtained. He asked what it was. Haruto looked at his hands in surprise and heard a voice that said that in order to speed up his awakening, he had to take a risk. He apologized for not telling in advance. The hero clenched his fists and heard that in fact, space-time magic is mastered only after 10 years. Only he was able to complete the hidden quest. Frowning ahead, Haruto asked not to say that he was indeed from the future. The golem behind waved his hand. The guy from the future ordered to come to life, because the training would begin now. The monster's eyes glowed pink. Haruto frowned at him. Then he bounced away, avoiding the blow. The guy flew into the air, surprised to think that his body was very light. It was because of the passive skill. Surrounded by radiance, the guy landed and heard a voice that he would teach him how to use his magic. Let him listen carefully. He didn't need to look to see, he had to feel. Resolutely looking forward, the hero heard that he must feel the passage of time that rules the world. The man from the future smiled, saying that he would succeed, because he was himself. The shadow hid the hero's eyes. The monster attacked from above. The stone palm was clenched into a fist. Haruto closed his eyes, saying that he had to concentrate and feel. Waves of energy flew from the golem. He thought it was a current. The fist was approaching, and the hero continued, of time all over the world. Haruto did not move. Then he resolutely opened his eyes. The stone golem stared at him. Blue lightning flew out of the hero's eye. He jumped, avoiding the attack with his fist. Smiling slightly, Haruto said that he would activate space-time magic. Landed on the golem's hand. Surrounded by blue pixels, Haruto applied Speed Boost Level 1. Then he quickly ran forward. It swept quickly over the stone body. The huge monster staggered. Now he swung his sword, thinking that there must be this cannonball. He thrust his blade into the center of the stone. The guy stood on the golem's head, sticking a sword into it. The black cube was covered with cracks. Then, a pink glow flew everywhere. The guy was surrounded by scattered debris. The foot touched the ground. The hero confidently walked away from the falling golem. There are system notifications that the adventurer Haruto has been leveled up by 4 and the sword has been increased by 8. 45,800 reputation points have been gained. Raising his hand, Haruto looked at the symbols that appeared. Looking away, he heard a voice asking, Did he believe him now? His fingers gripped the hilt. Holding the envelope, the hero replied that probably yes. The voice said that his next step was to leave the dungeon. As Haruto walked away from the fallen golem, he asked if there was anything else to do and heard that yes, a short detour, they were going to where Rina would be killed by the monster. The hero stopped. His legs trembled. The hero asked what he was talking about. Looking at the black envelope, the guy asked in amazement, what did he say? Introducing the blonde girl and footage from their past, Haruto heard him talking about his childhood friend, a D-rank dungeon. The hero was standing on the stone floor. The man from the future smiled and asked to save her and change the future. Haruto resolutely ran forward when he heard being called the Space and Time Mage. Haruto ran down the street after hearing that on May 23, 2054 Western calendar, Rina would be killed in the wilds of a D-rank dungeon due to the unexpected appearance of an extra-rank boss. Imagining the image of the girl, he heard that despite the fact that her teammates used healing magic. The hero quickly ran through the evening city, heard that there was no one else nearby. The entire team was completely destroyed. It was all not her fault, of course, he shouted to silence the voice. A concrete entrance to the dungeon appeared. Furrowing his brows, the guy asked why he hadn't told him earlier. He was moving forward rapidly and heard the voice of his future self, who asked if he didn't want to be a loner, because everyone he communicated with was in trouble. He remembered the crowd standing behind him and heard that for the same reason, he didn't really care that everyone avoided him. And yet, why did he care so much about others? Haruto noticed a figure standing in front. He turned around to see the monster behind him. The green creature smiled predatorily. The voice advised him not to pretend that he had an epiphany. The blade was surrounded by lightning. The guy attacked monsters and heard that this world could be changed with his help. Pieces of the goblins' bodies flew to the sides. The voice continued with his help. His foot touched the ground, and Haruto told his future self to shut up again. He resolutely looked ahead and continued that he would do what he wanted. The man smiled and said that he understood. This was the answer he was waiting for. He would teach him how to use magic. An explosion thundered on the lower floor of the dungeon. The girl was thrown back. Teammates saw her fall on her back. Rina was lying in a large crack in the floor. The girl's eyes were closed. She opened them a little. The creature was holding a blade. Instead of a head, there was a blue flame. In front of her was a dark guardian, an extra S-rank boss. The guy said displeased that he had not been informed about him. The girl added that it did not work. He did not react to barriers. The girl with her hair tied up in a ponytail shouted for them to calm down. They have a chance to win if they attack him all together. The guy exclaimed in fright, "No, he doesn't want to die." The Dark Warden charged just as the girl was shouting that this was not the time to say that. Swinging his blows, he cut the heroes. Thrown back by the attack, the heroes screamed. Rina opened one eye. The pupils reflected the bodies of their comrades. They were lying on the ground in front of her. The girl was lying face down. Blood was running down the guy's cheek. The eye reflected how the heroine reached out to Rina and asked for help. The Dark Warden approached the girl. She waved her staff, directing flames at him. A volley of fire struck the monster's head. However, the blue flames reappeared. Rina looked at him in fear. He raised his hand with a sword. He slashed his weapon sharply from top to bottom. Closing her eyes, the girl asked for help. In front of her stood Haruto, surrounded by chains, who used the space-time magic stop chain. Opening his mouth, the guy asked if she was okay. He spread his arms, holding the attack. The heroine's gaze was surprised. Turning to the enemy, the guy ordered him to move away. He was standing in front of the boss who pointed his sword at him. The guardian slammed his blade down. Haruto jumped away, leaving a trail behind him, and the warrior raised his sword. Bright traces remained from the blows. The guy swung his blade, thinking it was here. He closed his eyes, realizing that he was not succeeding. The weapon struck the monster's body again. The blades crossed. A crack appeared on the blade. The surprised guy saw a piece of his blade fly off. The flames on the monster's body were pink. Staring tensely ahead, the hero cursed in his mind. A black crack appeared. The monster stood in front of the hero. A bright pink beam flew forward. Everything disappeared in a bright explosion. Haruto moved with his legs apart and applied speed boost. He stared intently with bright eyes as he thought of his sword. Remembering the blow, he realized that it could not penetrate his armor. The guy remembered how Rina attacked and thought that he was doing damage to exposed body parts. Remembering the pink flames, the hero decided that he needed to focus on his head. The Dark Warden's head was a bundle of flames. Haruto rushed forward with the shard in his hand and heard the sword break. He replied that he knew. Opening his mouth, the hero used space-time magic physical rewind. Covered with blue pixels, Haruto shoots. Black lightning bolts radiated from the center. The blade slammed into the part between the armor. The beam shook the opponent's body. In his hand was a broken helmet. The guy's foot touched the ground. An explosion rang out behind him, a voice saying that it seemed to have changed fate itself. Rina looked at him in surprise. The guy took a step. He put his hands back. Opening her mouth, the girl screamed what was going on. Rina held out her finger demandingly, and demanded an explanation. Doctors carried the guys away on a stretcher. She said that first you need to thank her. There were abrasions on the girl's face. She said thank you for saving her friends. Scratching his head, Haruto replied that there was no reason. The girl looked at him carefully and asked what kind of power it was. The guy remembered the voice from the envelope that said that he shouldn't change time too much and shouldn't talk about space-time magic. My friend looked dissatisfied. With a serious look, Haruto asked if she could keep a secret what he would say. He threw up his hands and said that there was so much going on, he didn't want to stand out. A voice from the envelope was heard from the guy's pocket that he had done everything right. Let him lie something. The guy waved his hands, anxiously saying that he hadn't said anything when the girl asked. He presented a black envelope, angrily thinking that he would kill him. Lowering his head, the hero began the story. He touched his forehead with his finger and told him that he wanted to try a new skill with a sword. He had been training it for a long time, but he was still far from perfect, so he shouldn't tell anyone about it. Clapping his hands in plea, he shouted that she should not tell anyone about it. Rina touched her face thoughtfully. She blushed and asked, "Will this be their secret?" The hero was alarmed. He agreed, confirming that it was their secret. The heroine smiled. Embarrassed, Rina said she understood. She would wrap a strand of hair around her finger and say that if that was the case, then it would all stay between them. Haruto thought she really believed. People walked around on the playground in front of the Adventurer Agency High School. The hero thought that this was how Rina's death was prevented. I was sitting at the desk with notes, and thought that at the same time he had received great power, he could not change the past. The guy was sitting at the table. Putting the notes on the table, he thought that he could change the future. The hero looked away when he heard his nickname called. There was a trio of hooligans standing there. The guys laughed slyly. Approaching the hero, they said that they heard that he was in the dungeon yesterday. One guy said that he just ran away from there, when he realized that he was not able to do anything. Brown-haired pointed with a smile and said that moreover, they seemed to have faced an extra boss and defeated him. The second added that they did not expect anything from him. Haruto looked at them thoughtfully, and thought that there was some kind of witness. It turned out that his friend was there, and now he is in the hospital. He has serious injuries, and the medicine is very expensive. With a cunning smile, he showed the sign of the coin and asked if he understood what he was talking about. The money was from him, and silence from them. Haruto stood in front of the gang. Fire appeared in the palm of the bandit's hand. He asked, "Does he want to become their punching bag?" The second demanded to say something. Opening his mouth, the hero said that he had had enough. A classmate, not understanding, blamed everything on him. Haruto sternly repeated that he had had enough or they were deaf. A vein bulged on his opponent's face. The guys shrugged their shoulders, calling him names furiously. Haruto stood quietly, thinking that thanks to the increase in all indicators, he saw the bullies as if in negativity and thought that he could see clearly. The hero's eyes lit up blue. He swiftly struck the opponents in turn and continued to see all the movements. The guy stopped behind his defeated classmates. They turned around, calling him names, not understanding what was happening, so that they would listen and not approach him anymore, otherwise. He held his wallets and a lighter in his hands, saying that this was what would happen. The brown-haired man pointed his finger, indignantly saying that it was theirs. The guy pressed the lighter button. They looked at Haruto in fear, who said that they would promise it to each other. The hero's eyes burned red. He quoted their question. What would they say? The defeated classmates nodded. The guy standing in the corridor breathed a sigh of relief and thought that they would not climb on him anymore, and said aloud that it was time to return to class. Sitting at the table among the rest of the students, he thought that the next lesson was to measure magical abilities. The teacher looked ahead and said that they were starting and called Haruto. He got up from his seat. He remembered how sadly he had seen the zeros in his stats and thought that his magic abilities were almost at zero. Perhaps something had changed when he became a space and time mage. The guy's face was reflected in the mirror. He walked over to the professor's desk and thought that he would try to use a little magic as an experiment. His fingers touched the mirror. Haruto closed his eyes in concentration. Blue rays flew down. The guy's eyes lit up blue. The professor was surprised to see a bright glow emanating from the mirror. The man looked down in surprise. There was a bright blue flash. The mirror was broken. The teacher was shocked to see this. He fell to the floor by the table and shouted what it was. Haruto scratched his head awkwardly and thought he had overdone it. Students were sitting behind him, and the guy thought that everyone was looking at him. Rina smiled sweetly. A man was walking down the street after school. Someone said to have a look. The students watched the hero and talked that he broke the meter, saying, "It was some unknown magic. It can't be. If it's true, he must be above rank A." Haruto looked ahead in displeasure, thinking that gossip was the exact opposite of what he had heard before. He walked down the street and thought that this was even more annoying. The hero looked ahead when he heard how he was called. Holding the phone, he looked away. Then he looked at the other and heard that he was there. The guy was shocked to see something on the ground. His look was extremely surprised. In front of him was a disgruntled plush hedgehog who said it was him. The guy looked down attentively, recognizing this voice. Standing in front of the toy, Haruto asked if he was from the letter, and why did he look like that. The hedgehog put his hands on his hips and said that this was a kind of space-time magic. He had possessed his soft toy. Haruto clarified that he doesn't think he understands everything. The spirit that had possessed the toy looked at him sternly and said that the matter was urgent. Haruto looked down and heard that it was not the time to relax. Furrowing his eyebrows, the plush hedgehog said that the chaos dragon appeared earlier than in the future he knows. The guy standing opposite repeated in surprise. The man gritted his teeth and said in the form of a hedgehog that it was bad. He remembered the dragon that had attacked humans, said that he had destroyed the guild. Imagining the silhouette, he went on to say that he had taken many lives and caused an unprecedented disaster. A huge dark dragon opened its mouth. The man from the future continued that he was classified as an alpha-type monster. At least that was the case in his time. Haruto pursed his lips. The plush hedgehog said that he appeared earlier, and they must destroy him at all costs. The toy standing next to him continued that if this was not done, an unprecedented catastrophe would happen, like in his future. The guy was surprised. Waving his hand, he said that then they should contact the guild and request an extermination team. The hedgehog turned away, hearing that he was confident with a team of high-ranking mages. But the toy interrupted, saying that it would not work. There was no more time. A black shadow covered them. Haruto looked up in surprise. His eyes widened. In front of him was a huge black dragon. He was already here. Frightened, opening his mouth, Haruto asked if he shouldn't be in some dungeon. The voice from the toy replied that it was a ferocious migrating species. He wouldn't stay in one place. Chaos Dragon flew to the side. Looking at him, the guy said that if this continues, he looked intensely at the dragon soaring in the sky, saying that the disciples would suffer. The heroes were walking along the path in front of the school. They laughed and talked. Suddenly a shadow covered them. They saw a huge dragon in the sky and said that it could not be. Why was there a monster here? The red eye was glowing. The disciples ran frightened, screaming. The blonde girl shouted at everyone to get ready for battle. Those who don't have magic should run to the dormitory. The students held staves in their hands. Haruto ran towards them and shouted that they were the protectors from the student committee. A round magic seal appeared. Sorcerers created seals. Bright rays flew towards the dragon. The girl raised her staff. With a stern look, she said that they should not let him near the school. The dragon saw a magic seal in front of him. The glow was getting brighter. There was a blinding flash and smoke from the explosion rose in the air. The disciples looked at it happily, saying that she could. The blonde closed her eyes when she heard that she was the head of the committee. Suddenly, her gaze became strained. The monster opened its mouth and roared. Shouts were heard that there was not a scratch on it. It was a dragon's slayer bullet. A shining ball appeared in the dragon's mouth. And then he let a beam of light shine on the guys. The frightened face disappeared in a bright glow. A powerful explosion appeared. The students were lying on the ground. Haruto said that the magic protectors from the committee instantly. A hedgehog sat on his shoulder and said that it was not surprising. They were just schoolchildren. The guy exclaimed that now was not the time for such comments. Opening its mouth, the toy called to the hero. Haruto squeezed his eyes shut when something pink flew over his face. The hedgehog was holding the container. The guy asked what he was doing. The dragon's red eye glowed, and the words were heard that it was incense. This smell attracted dragons. The monster opened its huge wings. The man from the future explained that the dragon was incredibly ferocious, but not very smart, respectively. He looked up tensely when he heard that he would now be aiming only at him. The monster approached, its mouth open, the voice saying that it had to do it, it had to defeat it. Haruto calmly looked ahead. He heard the request to show them the power of his magic. The main character writhes from the mucus that got on his face. He stands still, asking what he is doing. A giant dragon looms over him. It is said that it is dragon incense, so he will become his only target, because the smell attracts the monster. Haruto frowns at the enemy as he hears that he must win this fight. The eye of the flying creature lights up red. The dragon flies directly at the main character, who begins to run away, while the little assistant prompts him. A friend runs nearby and asks if he is okay. Haruto, frowning, turns around at this exclamation. The girls pick Rin up. He notices it. Haruto shines with a blue light. He is asked that he does not want to involve her in all this. He denies it. A little helper with a serious look demands in this case to run further, because this way they can avoid unnecessary eyes. They rush forward, the protagonist using a powerful acceleration. The giant dragon continues to chase them through the quarters of the city. A fighter runs among the Tokyo train tracks. He deftly jumps over, declaring that this is an abandoned train station. Haruto rushes on. The protagonist stands next to a small animal, clarifying what kind of dragon it was. An image of a monster spewing flames from its mouth is shown. It is explained that its essence is a dark element. A collision with its flames promises instant death, and the vapors around it have a delayed debuff effect. The beast sits on the fence and explains that it is resistant to physical attacks. Simple ones do not cause any damage. Haruto wonders that it appeared 5 years earlier. With a serious expression, the assistant replies that he is still small and not particularly smart, so he is easily lured by the smell. The main character crosses his arms and listens to the fact that he is definitely worth 500,000 credits. Dumbfounded, Haruto turns around, asking the price again. In a rage, he shakes the animal, which declares that this is the price of incense, took it from his account. The little helper smiles awkwardly as he is stretched out with his arms and shouted about what he is doing and how he knows his password in the first place. The disgruntled protagonist stands opposite, hearing that there is no need to worry, because he will quickly return what was spent and in the end, If he is defeated, the reward will be huge, and that's not all. The imperturbable animal claims that money is just the icing on the cake, with a skill cube from this monster. A blue flying cube is visible, saying that Haruto will be able to gain a new magic skill. The worried guy watches. He is offered to solve problems as they come. A serious animal sits on the fence and explains that the dragon of chaos is far from adult. Its weak point is the heart, and it is extremely vulnerable. Suddenly, they see an attacking dragon in front of them, without having time to finish. The protagonist and his companion bounce off a powerful explosion. A ferocious monster forms a cloud of fire in its mouth. The main character feels how everything around him is trembling. Strong flames erupt directly in their direction. MC deftly bounces off and runs away. He stops nearby, and holding a sword says that he did not think of it himself. Haruto looks ahead in surprise. A purple aura permeates everything around. Stones rise into the sky. A strong explosion is heard throughout the area. The dragon, with its mighty wings raised, stands in the middle of the smoke. The monster sees a shining hole in his chest. It begins to take off. His gaze is serious. The protagonist sparkles with magic with his whole body, claiming that it was just him, half a second ago. The discouraged animal wonders if he has just come up with a practical application of space-time magic to avoid the attack. Haruto flies up and is right in front of the dragon's chest. A bright purple core can be seen inside the monster. Frowning, the protagonist sees this and realizes that he is facing the heart of a dragon. In a rage, he swings his blade, slashes a huge dragon. The monster begins to roar in shock. The main character realizes that he does not feel the slightest resistance. A bright flash of purple is heard in front of him. He looks at it in horror and realizes that this simply cannot be. The monster's body suddenly disappears. There is only smoke around. Haruto turns around and asks his companion that he didn't talk about such an ability. The hero lands on the tracks, hearing that he can turn his body into steam, so you need to be more careful. The disgruntled protagonist asks to warn about this in advance next time. The animal with a serious look says that the reverse process is also possible. The ferocious dragon absorbs energy. Small monsters appear in front of it. The companion explains that when the steam turns into small dragons, which are called legion. The excited guy frowns, reminding him that he was told that it was just a cub. Dozens of small creatures fly in the sky. Haruto says that it is not so easy to cope with him, and he was originally supposed to be a strong opponent, but only after 5 years. The protagonist with a sword stands next to his companion and asks why he appeared now. He assumes that he managed to change the future by his actions. With a slight grin, the animal says that you need to answer for your actions and defeat him. MC sighs, asking that it's all his own fault. Suddenly, an energy monster appears in front of his face. The protagonist jumps away from a powerful explosion using acceleration. He sees an approaching dragon, deftly swivels his sword, cutting through the mutant. The enemy's silhouette dissipates. They circle over the fighter. The guy realizes that small dragons do not evaporate when he attacks them. The assistant at this time urges you to fight them off and look for an opportunity to attack the main dragon. The fighter stands firmly on the ground and prepares to act. His legs begin to glow, declares that he himself knows what to do. There is a bright shine in his eyes. He understands that he needs to act right now. It jumps forward, accompanied by a powerful flow of energy. He swings his blade and cuts through flying creatures. Skillfully slashes with his sword. Over and over again, it cuts through energy creatures. The companion is sitting nearby at this time and realizes that he has destroyed everyone and apparently his level has increased by 3. The tired protagonist wipes away the sweat, asking if they are over. The main dragon appears in front of the fighter with a shining heart in his chest. The monster opens its mouth and unleashes a powerful stream. The protagonist is discouraged by the impending attack. A strong wave is moving directly towards him. A powerful explosion occurs in the middle of the railway tracks. The guy is holding on to the car in shock. The dragon, having once again opened its mouth, is preparing to release energy again. The protagonist's eyes are wide open with excitement and surprise. Gritting his teeth, he rushes away, realizing that there will be another attack. A strong explosion occurs. Haruto looks ahead and realizes that he has spent a lot of energy on those dragons. At this rate he can lose. The protagonist's gaze is focused, aware that he will have to wait a few minutes before attacking again. The smoke disperses through the air, realizing that it must hit the weak point, the heart of the enemy. The fighter deftly dodges the lunge of a mutant that flies by. Excited, Haruto looks up and watches. A flying monster looms over him. The assistant notices that things are bad, because now the protagonist's attacks will not reach him. A powerful dragon flaps its wings, emitting an aura. He has a ferocious appearance, huge fangs. The main character does not understand what to do. There are cars nearby. A train is seen nearby, and Haruto wonders if there really is nothing he can do. The guy turns around with concentration. He sees trains in the distance, realizing that this is what he needs. With a serious look, he prepares to act, thinking that if he does what is necessary. The assistant, perplexed, asks what he came up with, because the situation is becoming more and more difficult. Suddenly, the protagonist takes a small companion. He begins to run forward, holding him close, shouting that he will follow him. The fighter deftly jumps around the cars. Frowning, the main character replies that he knows thereby responding to the shout that no matter how high he rises, he cannot reach the dragon. He swings his companion with all his might. He throws it at the monster, stating that this is why he will do so. Haruto holds a magic chain in his hand. She shackles the flying pet. He used space-time magic. Haruto relies on his assistant. He jumps high up, approaching the dragon, while his companion flies to the ground in shock. A ferocious dragon burns with fire. With a confident look, the main character realizes that he will not let it evaporate. Dozens of chains fly towards the enemy. They attack the dragon, which roars in pain. Haruto approaches him, swinging his sword, at which time he realizes that he won't have the strength to hold him for more than a couple of seconds, but it will be enough. The guy starts attacking in anger. He touches the point of the blade to the opponent's heart. The protagonist's gaze is extremely harsh. A bright light bursts out of the mutant. The blue chains emit small sparks. Haruto continues to press on his sword. Everything around him sparkles. The magic chains are broken. The tip pierces the dragon's heart. Blue lightning shoots in different directions. The giant dragon roars in pain, streams of light bursting out of its body. Its weak point crumbles into small pieces. A soft toy lies on the ground. A powerful explosion occurs nearby. The system says that the main character defeated the Dragon of Chaos. The main character, frowning, looks ahead. In front of him lies a giant dragon, under which a pool of blood can be seen. The system says that the adventurer's level is increased by 15. The skill of using a sword is up to 28, and 872,000 credits are obtained. The window shows the Fong of the Dragon of Chaos, which the protagonist obtained. An important message says that it is recommended to increase the rank to C15. You need to contact the nearest guild. A voice from the envelope states that as expected of him, a good job has been done, however. The enraged animal shouts that he used him as a stepping stone, and how to understand this at all. At this time, the main character is carefully examining the system window. He stands with his back to his companion, reading about how the secret skill of space-time magic has been increased by 20, the skill of physical rewind, acceleration, and the passive skill of a level 2 mage has been acquired. Frowning, a voice from the envelope says that he managed to prevent a terrible catastrophe thanks to this, so he forgives. Suddenly, a siren appears behind him, suggesting that someone has reported what happened. Haruto turns around at the sound, the companion saying that it will be bad if they find out about them. A small version of the main character jumps on his shoulder and says that it's time to leave. He remarks that at least they agree on this. The protagonist jumps over the fence. A residential building stands in the middle of the night. Light can be seen from the windows. The guy is sitting with his companion on the sofa. He opens the package, addressing the fake self. He looks at the little creature, asking if he eats at all. The companion sighs, asking how a stuffed animal can eat at all. Sometimes it is necessary to turn on the head. The protagonist eats with a serious look, stating that he turned it on and realized that soft toys do not talk. He brought the sandwich to his mouth and suddenly remembered something. He gets up from the sofa and walks on, a soft toy watching him. MC walks over to the table and pours himself a drink. He puts a mug in front of a photo of his family and tells mom and dad that he came home. The companion sits silently on the sofa. The protagonist looks at the frame without turning around and asks the voice from the envelope not to laugh at it. Toy looks at him and replies that he wouldn't, because he is Haruto. The companion watches with a stern face. In the photo, his sister Ria realizes that she won't talk about what happened to her, because it's too early for him to know. The main character, closing his eyes, closes the bottle. He realizes that when he becomes a good magician, then he will tell. The guy opens his eyes in surprise and asks that he was given some materials for weapons. The system window shows the Fong of the Chaos Dragon. A stuffed animal sits across from him and explains that his sword is already falling apart and needs to be repaired. The blade is sheathed. The main character is told that he cannot go to school tomorrow, but make a new weapon. Haruto stands in front of the giant building of the Adventurers Guild, a branch of the Metropolitan Government Office. He says that he always thought he had nothing to do in this building. The companion sits on his shoulder with an angry look. He smirks, stating that thanks to him, they are now here. The guy goes to the door with the toy. It is said that they will go home as soon as they finish here. Events take place at the reception. The protagonist looks at the screen. While number 23 calls to the counter, the main character understands that it is their turn. A smiling worker asks how she can help. He replies that he cleared the dungeon and would like to check the results. Haruto holds out the card. She notices that the guy looks weak and inept. With a nervous smile, she says that she will do it now. She takes his card after asking for it. The worker looks at the screen in front of her. Inscriptions are visible in the bright blue window. MC is amazed to see a window in front of him. The girl calmly explains that it is necessary to confirm the identity by placing a hand on the panel, then they can see its results. Haruto touches his fingers to the window. The employee scrolls through the screen and watches. Her eyes are extremely surprised. She sees a record in front of her that the adventurer's rank is being upgraded from E to C. She exclaims that the guy has risen in just one day, because it is impossible. The discouraged girl is in a stupor, stating that this is very strange and perhaps just a glitch in the system. Other fighters walk down the corridor and turn around. The main character thinks that this is very bad. His gaze is serious. He realizes that he cannot attract attention to himself. He hates when this happens. Haruto holds out a glowing hand in front of him. Using a second-level physical rewind, he wants to give it a try. The main character looks at the employee with a slight smile and says that apparently the identity verification was successful. The system says that he has E rank. Haruto looks at her and clarifies if this is the case. The lady holds the card and says that she will now give it back, while realizing that this is very strange. The main character takes her away and thanks the girl. The message indicates that he has still increased his rank to C. The question is that he applied rewind only on the screen. The protagonist, closing his eyes, asks that they should change the future as little as possible. He goes to the elevator and asks if he is here. The elevator arrived. My companion said that I needed to get into it. Haruto drives silently inside. The doors open. He goes outside. He sees a door in front of him with the inscription A and tells the toy that no one below this rank can enter here. The companion sits on his shoulder and asks him not to pay attention to this. Suddenly, the soft toy turns into a letter, emitting a bright light. Haruto holds an envelope in shock in front of him, and a voice asks him to hold it up to the scanner. The reader is near the door. The protagonist assures that there is a very serious security here. He still insists. The guy brings the envelope to the screen. Suddenly, the doors begin to open. The main character with a blade goes inside, asking if everything is really so simple. The voice from the envelope answers that you need to start. Pleasantly surprised, the protagonist hears that they will make weapons suitable for a space and time age. The protagonist turns around when he hears the question that they have some kind of excursion planned today. A guy in a white coat is standing nearby and working. In the hand of the main character is an envelope that says that this is not his journey, they just need to make a new weapon. The stranger turns around, asking if he is an adventurer. A man with glasses is the head of the weapons lab, Tokimune, and sadly asks that he has a rank higher than A. The worker scratches his head, stating that he can't shake the feeling that he is a student no higher than F rank, while clarifying that he broke down the door or something. The protagonist holds out the Fang of Chaos to him, after the advice of the voice from the envelope. Fang shines with a purple light, and Haruto states that it is a very rare material and he would like to make a weapon out of it. The man adjusts his glasses and asks to see. He looks at me in amazement, saying that this is not bad. The protagonist agrees with a serious look when asked if he has killed a monster. Tokimune looks at him and says okay. He points his fingers at his watch. Suddenly, a hatch opens in the floor. The employee says that you can start. The doors of the secret hatch move apart. Suddenly, a device flies out of there. The man claims that this is the most high-tech device in Japan. Inside, doors open. It is said that this is the latest development in the sphere of another world. Amazed, Haruto hears about the fact that the analytics materials he brought are missing from the guild archives. The device is in the middle of the laboratory. Tokimune says that he will take the chance to study it, and the protagonist will be able to use the device for free and will be able to call when he is done. A bag lands next to the guy. A voice from the envelope says that Haruto has never made a weapon and you can teach him. Surprised, MC looks at the system window. He points his finger at the screen, realizing that in the academy you can only learn to craft weapons with rank B and above. The hero stands in front of the open device, hearing from the letter that the whole process can be divided into 4 parts. The first is that you first need to decide which weapon will improve. He will have a sword. A scheme with ranks and a protagonist is shown. It is explained that next you need to choose an attribute with which they want to improve weapons, because the higher the rank, the fewer items are required. The protagonist with a serious look remembers that his sword is F rank, so they can only use one attribute. Various materials are shown. A soft toy explains what to choose next. There are different groups. There are minerals. There are materials for monsters. The swords collide, causing a spark. It is said that in some cases it is even possible to combine 2 swords. In the system notification Fang of the Dragon Chaos, the companion reveals that they have it as a material. Then after they have everything prepared, they can start synthesizing. An important factor is the amount of time he spends on crafting. Haruto carefully examines and thinks when he hears that all of the above determines the strength of a weapon. The guy reaches for the blade after they start. In the system window, there is a choice of 5 elements: fire, water, air, earth, lightning. A voice from the envelope asks if there are really only such elements in this time. The main character pokes at the zipper, hearing that there is nothing to be done about it, and you need to choose it. The compartment is pulled out. The protagonist asks that now he probably needs to put the material. He puts the dragon's fang in the compartment. The drawer is pushed back. A voice from the envelope says that it is necessary to put the production time of 3 years. The discouraged guy exclaims that he can't wait that long. Closing his eyes, he hears what to do as his companion says. The protagonist moves his finger. It is said that the synthesis of weapons begins. The waiting time is 3 years. Suddenly, the envelope flies inside. The letter flies inside the compartment. Bright microcircuits illuminate everything around. The main character closes himself from the strongest flash. There is a release of energy. In the system window, an A-rank Chaos Sword is presented. The device thanks for waiting and says that the weapon synthesis is complete. Haruto examines it, holding it in his hands, asking if it is really ready, while the companion notes that he is very tired, because he knows how to do this, but very rarely. Tokimian opens his mouth in amazement and asks that instead of 3 years, the weapon was made in a few seconds. The employee angrily pokes at the screen, not understanding what happened. The protagonist puts away his sword, hearing a voice from the envelope that he needs to hurry up and leave, while the blade is moved to his inventory. Haruto heads for the exit and thanks the manager, who in turn asks him to wait. The main character walks along a dark corridor. Someone asks if he knows the rumors about this Anon. The guy turns his attention to the side. A stranger explains to another that he killed that huge monster so quickly, he wonders that he was alone, an amazing newcomer. Haruto passes by as they discuss that it is impossible to imagine what kind of person he is. If his identity was revealed, the famous clans would do anything to lure him away. The guy stands in front of the other and exclaims that he would also like to be in the S-rank clan with that heroine. The other says that he with his D rank is as far from there as to Moon on foot. The sad protagonist understands that things are bad. He needs to go home. The stuffed animal calmly replies that they will enjoy the day and try out his new sword. The astonished protagonist wonders where they will go. With a sly grin, the companion says that where the sacred beast lives. The three-headed energy dog barks ferociously. Haruto asks in horror about the sacred Cerberus. Rin runs frightened and calls out to the protagonist. The girl exclaims through tears that thank God he is alive. Lowering her head, she says that she heard that the monster that attacked the school flew after him. She clenches her fists worriedly, stating that she wrote to him, but he did not read, and besides, he did not come to school. The astonished protagonist asks what she is doing here, while she screams that she was very worried. Rina says with a serious face that she should be asking him, because she came as a representative to apply for the dungeon training. The main character looks at her and realizes that she is in the top mages among high school. The disgruntled toy offers to stop talking, he agrees. Wiping away her tears, the girl declares that she is glad that everything is fine with him. Haruto apologizes with an awkward smile for making him worry. Rina wipes away her tears and smiles. A disgruntled toy sits in a briefcase. The girl exclaims who it is. She sees him with loving eyes and calls him very cute. The heroine grabs him and wants to see him. The girl hugs him tightly and says that it smells like Haruto and it is very nice. The angry toy thinks that this is just absurd. A surprised friend hears an offer to take a toy for a couple of days since she liked it so much. A discouraged companion sits in her arms while the protagonist says that he will give it back later. Embarrassed, Rina thanks him for the opportunity. Haruto turns around and waves his hand, stating that they will see each other again. The girl happily waves her hand in response. The main character realizes that he was able to distract her. The companion mentally asks him to wait. A cry is heard throughout the neighborhood with a request not to abandon him. The events take place the next day at the high school Adventure Academy. The disgruntled assistant looks away. Haruto walks with him on his shoulder and asks him not to be offended, because he almost immediately took him away. The enraged companion shouts that this is not the problem at all. He keeps his paws on his shoulder. With a serious look, he declares that he saw a childhood friend whom he lost 10 years ago, all thanks to Haruto. The main character is surprised to hear words of gratitude. The protagonist walks through the park, saying that he is glad to hear this. A guy with a phone sits nearby and says that MC is known as the god of the plague. The main character is walking. The stranger calls him interesting. The adventurer sits with his legs crossed and says that he will be his target. The protagonist goes forward unsuspecting. The stranger offers to amuse him, calling him a mysterious blade that cuts dragons. Near the door there is a sign that reads Student Council. The hero is furious and puts the papers on the table. Various awards and crystals are visible on his clothes. A girl with glasses named Yuzuki angrily asks if he really doesn't know anything. The main character stands in front of the vice president of the student council and assures that it is so. The lady holds sheets of paper and says that the day before yesterday, when the dragon attacked the school after school, the disgruntled girl claims that there are rumors that the guy ran in the same direction where the dragon flew. Haruto scratches his head in bewilderment, explaining that the monster switched to someone else and began to chase him. So most likely that guy won, and he was just lucky. Yuzuki, frowning, asks if he knows that student. The protagonist sits on a chair and shakes his head, saying that he does not know, because at that moment he was most thinking about where to run away. The lady adjusts her glasses and says that everything is clear. The main character takes the door handle and says that in this case he went to class. At this moment she asks to wait for him. The guy walks down the hallway, wondering why he is suspected. A soft toy sits on his shoulder and says that most likely because of this. On the screen of the tablet, you can see a post in which it is discussed that a student is saving the city from a dragon. The monster screams furiously. People write that the guy is just a savior. Footage of the battle is visible. Some people assume that this is a fake. The protagonist wonders if they can delete the video with the help of magic. The disgruntled companion replies that with his skill level, this is impossible. The main character thought so. Sighs, the guy goes inside. He looks attentively in front of him. Other adventurers in the class notice him. Haruto sits down at the table, realizing that everyone used to avoid him, but now, the amazed guys follow him. The protagonist understands that now everything is somehow different. Rina hits his desk and shouts that he must be careful. The protagonist asks again. The raincoat guy comes closer, stating that he doesn't need to say anything more to him. The white-haired hero goes on. Everyone turns to him. The president of the Ryuga Student Council, with his hand on his heart, says that he will take care of it. With a confident look, he closes his eyes and introduces himself by name. The arrogant president declares that he is a brilliant magician, whom no one can get ahead of in the ratings, and in short, the strongest player in the school. A surprised MC stands with Rine. He is asked that his name is Haruto. He agrees. Ryuga raises his hand with a sinister grin and claims that he has come to challenge him to a magical duel. The blonde froze in anticipation of a reaction. Classmates grinned, discussing that the hero was finished. Haruto exchanged glances with his interlocutor and frowned. The guy remembered how the meter broke, and the brunette was embarrassed, and Ryuga said that a loser with no magical abilities destroyed a device for measuring the abilities of mages, and traces of unknown magic remained in place. Then shots from the news flashed through his head, and the blonde added that the interlocutor had also destroyed that fierce dragon alone. The main character narrowed his eyes, wondering how he knew everything. The other man touched his chin and muttered that it was interesting. He flashed his eyes and offered to nip everything in the bud. The brunette frowned in response. The president of the student council waved his hand and said that he had also defeated the dragon on his own. The guy grinned and said that in a magical duel it would be found out who was more suitable for the title of Dragon Slayer. The hero imagined the arena and thought that he was being summoned to a special form of testing allowed and conducted by the agency between students to assess their skills. He introduced the two wizards and remembered that the results of duels were used to rank the students. An image of a winner popped up in front of him, and students at the top are guaranteed privileges, and usually join the guild after graduation. However, the only rule of the duel is not to use magic that can lead to death, severe injury, or indelible consequences. Haruto thought of the people in the uniform of the student council and noted that the contenders for the duel are chosen by the party with the lowest rank, while they have the right to nominate an opponent with a higher rank. The blonde turned around, and the main character remembered that a person with a higher rank cannot refuse an invitation to a duel, but a person whose rank is lower can do it. Haruto sighed, thinking that he would never in his life accept a challenge to a duel from a student who ranked first in the school. Ryuga pointed to the girl and advised her to pay more attention to her social circle if she wants to become a member of the student council next semester. The girl clasped her hands, and the interlocutor paid attention to her hips. Rinna turned pale and flinched. The blonde man grinned and assured her that he would teach her how to properly join the student council at the next private lesson. The student lowered her gaze and quietly thanked him for his help. The main character watched them from the sidelines. He clenched his fists forcefully. Then he stood up and called out to the president. The guy straightened up and stood in front of him. Haruto looked at the blonde man resolutely and stated that he agreed to a duel. The girl turned to him in surprise. The interlocutor grinned and wanted to say something, but the hero interrupted him, saying that there was one condition. He arched an eyebrow and asked again. The brunette pointed his finger at him and suggested that the loser drop out of school. The president grinned. He turned around and happily agreed. The hero looked after him intently. After a while, the young man took a bite of the burger, and the voice noted that it was cheeky. A toy sitting next to him added that he was becoming more and more like him, and warned that Ryuga was strong. The brunette looked at his interlocutor in surprise and asked if he really knew him. The doll nodded. He introduced the tall building and the cloaked people, and revealed that the blonde would become the director of the guild's branch in Shinjuku and create many new fire element spells, as well as become one of the 7 sages. The hero introduced the student, and the interlocutor agreed that he was quite slippery and would use his position to suppress the women under his command. Haruto visualized the president harassing his girlfriend and muttered that the guy was also an asshole. The voice remembered the mages and added that Ryuga was good at leading people, and he was also so sure that the young man was a dragon slayer, most likely because his subordinates had told him something. He introduced the blonde man and stated that his talent for magic was beyond the pale, and he had reason to call himself a genius magician. The brunette was sweating when he heard that he couldn't beat him in the present. The toy squinted at the ward and offered to look at the indicators. A window of characteristics opened in front of them. The hedgehog appreciated the skills he had learned and admitted that the young man had grown up a lot. He touched the screen, on which sparks ran. The letters blurred and began to change, and the hero guessed what he was doing. In front of him, there appeared the characteristics of an opponent who was 10 times stronger and was already at a rank. Haruto looked at the toy puzzled and asked if it was also space-time magic, and he was surprised that there was such a big difference between him and his rivals. He turned, noticing a girl who was comforting a friend. The second one cried and muttered that she couldn't do it anymore. She arched an eyebrow and asked why she couldn't use magic at all now, because she would easily fail the exam. The interlocutor looked at her anxiously and said that she was good with her wand, on the other hand, everything else. The student lowered her head and decided that all that remained was to go to a private lesson with Ryuga at his home. The main character shuddered in surprise. He looked at his hand. The image of the president who had threatened Rinna appeared before his eyes, and the girl said doomly that at least she would just undress, close her eyes, and everything would be over quickly. The brunette clenched his fist and turned to the students. They turned around in surprise. The guy moved in their direction. The girls turned, determining that he was from a swordsman's course. Haruto looked at them seriously and stated that it was not necessary to go to these private classes and he would take care of it. The hero stretched out his hand to the girl, and she shuddered. The wizard closed his eyes. A glow began to emanate from his body, and the young man thought that he had noticed in the magic ability measurement lesson that he could feel the movement of magic. In front of him was the silhouette of a female student, and Haruto noted that in her body, the magic looked like burns, and the current had stopped due to some spell that clearly exceeded her level. A ball sparkled in her stomach, then in the area of her collarbones, and the hero decided that he needed to find out the root of the problem and return the current of magic to normal. The brunette narrowed his eyes and asked not to be afraid. The interlocutor looked at him questioningly. The guy concentrated the energy in his palm. He touched her body with quick movements. The student looked up in confusion. Her friend shielded the girl and displeased asked what he was doing, but instead of answering, the hero suggested that the student use magic. She nodded uncertainly. A green sphere appeared between her palms. A bright light emanated from her. The girl smiled and exclaimed that everything was working. The brunette rounded her eyes and noted that her friend had become even stronger than before. The disciple smiled enthusiastically as she looked at her strength. She approached the hero and thanked him. The guy watched her wipe away her tears and was glad that she would not have to go to Ryuga. The brunette knitted his eyebrows, remembering his girlfriend. The sunset was spreading in the sky, and the hero headed for the exit. The toy squinted at him as he asked what to do to become stronger. The young man looked at his hand and reminded him that there were 3 days before the duel. He frowned and said that he had to catch up with his opponent in terms of stats, so which dungeon he could pass would increase his stats as much as possible. The interlocutor smirked and replied that he had already found the location and information about the new dungeon. Haruto frowned and wondered what the reward was. The hedgehog grinned. He presented the tables and replied that there was a huge amount of experience, new spells, the ability to test a new sword and summon a monster. The guy imagined all this and smiled, noting that this is what is needed. B-rank dungeon, Azabu. The main character was sweating and thought that he really said so, but he really would have to fight with all of them. Golems crowded around him. He looked around and asked if it was worth it. A sword appeared in his hand. The toy on his shoulder bent down and said that neither of them should be allowed to escape. The young man rushed to attack, determined to kill all the monsters in this dungeon. His eyes blazed with blue fire. An hour later there was a fight on the lower level of the crystal labyrinth. The cloak lad swung his sword at the enemy. His surprised face was reflected in the shard of the broken blade. Her partner put out her staff and shouted to get out of the way. She frowned and used the flame stream. The girl grinned and asked how the enemy could do this. The smoke cleared, and it was clear that the dark crystal knight didn't care. The adventurers cowered, not understanding why their attacks were not working. The enemy swung his weapon. The partners closed their eyes in fear. Suddenly a bright flash appeared. The guy opened his eyes. His face immediately showed shock. Someone's blade struck the knight's head. The main character forcefully unleashed an attack on the enemy. There was a powerful explosion. The adventurers looked up at the young man and exclaimed that they had been saved. The brunette wiped his chin and said that there were many monsters spawning in this dungeon, so it would be better for them to leave as soon as possible. The girl helped her partner up, and he asked what Haruto would do. The student frowned. He gripped the hilt of his blade and stated that he would have to distract the rest of the monsters so that they could leave. The adventurers wandered to the exit, thanking their savior. The hero knitted his eyebrows, and the hedgehog on his shoulder said that he had killed a total of 89, and this was not even half of what was needed. The guy took a fighting stance and replied that he knew. A crowd of knights towered in front of him, and the interlocutor advised him to finish quickly and raise his level. The hero swung his sword. He moved forward, scattering his opponents. The toy on the shoulder looked at the ward and said that such monsters give the most experience of all that the crystal labyrinth has, so killing them will be the most effective. Several knights jumped up, and the tutor added that this was not an easy opponent for the young man. The brunette's eyes flashed. He put out his hand and created blue chains. The shackles pierced the monsters, and the hedgehog reminded them that the sword of chaos with an element of lightning should help. Haruto rushed to attack. With a swift movement, he cut several knights. The student resolutely knitted his eyebrows. Then he landed on the floor, and the toy again asked to kill as many as possible. Chains appeared from under the hero's foot. His pupils flashed, and he declared that he would not leave a single one. The bright light blinded the enemies. The young man swung his blade, attacking several at once. The guy frowned. He sliced through the air with his blade. Haruto stood among the shards, but the monsters surrounded him again. Sweat dripped from the hero's face. A knight in a cloak rushed to him. It was the Dark Crystal General. The young man knitted his eyebrows and noted that he looked like a boss. The guy barely managed to block the attack. He gritted his teeth and thought that he shouldn't be frightened by his strength. Purple smoke began to emit from the blade when the hero remembered the special characteristics of the sword. The student parried the blow, and the enemy's sword entered the ground. The hero's blade radiated darkness. The young man quickly took a fighting stance. He swung his weapon. His eyes flashed with lightning. A powerful blow cut through the air. The knight's head fell to the ground with a crash. Haruto turned pale and breathed heavily. However, he immediately jumped away, dodging the attacks when the advisor called out to him. The hedgehog frowned and noted that the principles of space-time magic are different from ordinary magic. The brunette swung his sword, and he added that it had nothing to do with magical abilities. The young man presented the diagram, and the voice explained that it uses a certain factor that controls the passage of time in the world, so anyone, even without magical abilities, can learn to do so. Haruto frowned and was indignant that he was only talking about it now, to which the interlocutor said that in an extreme situation it is best remembered. The monsters continued to advance. The young man created chains that stopped his opponents. A few blows with the blade cut them apart, but the toy advised them not to relax. The guy shuddered and turned to the silhouette. Dark crystal mages appeared in front of him. The monsters created energy in their palms. Haruto froze, and the other reminded him that he was a mage of space and time. The enemies shot beams at him, but the young man dodged, hearing that he must always keep an eye on the Chronos factor, even during battle. The brunette stared, noticing a flash in front of his face. He frowned and ordered the passage of time to stop. A blue light emanated from his eyes. Pulsars froze in the air in front of him. Then an explosion rang out in the room. The silhouette of an adventurer stood out among the smoke. He knitted his eyebrows and held out his hand with the seal. The enemies stood in front. The guy raised his other hand and frowned. Energy was released from his palm. A powerful blue beam shot towards the monsters. Now there was a pile of shrapnel in front of the young man. Haruto looked at his hand dumbfounded, having learned that this is how to use the flow of time. The hedgehog grinned and replied that this is how everything works. He remembered the young man's blow and thought that he was even more talented than him, because he had already been able to release a chrono beam. The blade plunged into the stone. The main character stood on a pile of monsters. The young man was sweating and breathing heavily, but notifications flashed in front of him about the increase in the level. The brunette leaned on his leg and asked what the next target was. In the inner part of the lower level hall, there was a main boss. The Cerberus sacred beast flashed its eyes. The main character approached the gate, from behind which there was a draft. He clutched his head and squinted in pain. The hedgehog looked at the young man and explained that this was the consequence of the continued use of space-time magic, because it greatly burdened the brain. The toy frowned and asked if the guy wanted to return. He put his hands on the door and refused. The hero knitted his eyebrows and replied that time was running out. So Haruto found himself in the inner hall of the lower level of the labyrinth in front of the final enemy. The student was sweating, and the mentor whispered that this monster, unlike the others, had honor and dignity. Cerberus stepped closer, and the hedgehog advised the young man not to relax and to be careful. The main boss growled. Haruto shrunk, and the interlocutor added that in front of him was a magical beast with the soul of a samurai. The young man closed his eyes and clattered. The enemy narrowed his eyes. The toy held out a flask and advised the hero to drink to feel better. The student obediently unscrewed the lid. The opponent sat down waiting for the young man to recover. The hedgehog jumped off the hero's shoulder. The brunette took a sip, thinking that this boss was weird. Cerberus watched the intruder, and the toy said that he had an old wound on his right side, so he should aim at it. Haruto wiped his lips and noticed that he could feel his frightening aura again. The enemy stood up, and the guy was surprised that he was really waiting for him, as befits a samurai. Magical flashes emanated from the wool. The enemy swung his paw sharply. The young man hurried to jump to the side, and the blow hit the floor. The hero's eyes sparkled. He noticed the same wound on his opponent's body. It was a ragged scar. Cerberus rushed to attack again. The brunette frowned and tried to shield himself with his sword. One of the mouths bit the blade. Haruto tensed as the enemy gnawed at his blade. The young man suddenly let go of the handle. He jumped over his opponent. The third head turned around and opened its mouth, concentrating energy. The hedgehog frowned and shouted that the enemy was attacking, and he had to dodge. The guy gritted his teeth and pushed off the ground. A powerful beam almost hit the adventurer, but he managed to dodge. The young man clenched his fist, gathering his energy. He aimed at the wound on his side. The hero struck hard. The beast opened its mouth and roared. The guy immediately jumped away. The monster shook its head. The hedgehog remembered the incident with the student and asked if it was really an impact on pressure points. The scar on Cerberus's side was healing, and he asked if the young man had healed his old wound. The hero looked at his opponent and replied that he repaid him for waiting for him to recover, as he wanted a fair fight. The toy stared, exclaiming that the brunette is abnormal and will die like that. Haruto nodded and retorted that kindness should be returned even to monsters. Besides, if he died here, it would be the last thing he did. A blade flashed in the air. The sword fell to the floor in front of the protagonist, and the hedgehog was surprised that the enemy returned it to him. The beast looked at his opponent patiently. The guy sweated and replied that he did not need him. He clenched his fists and asked to attack. Haruto unleashed the energy and stated that it was not for the sake of leveling up or killing the boss. The young man knitted his eyebrows and said that it was a duel. Cerberus narrowed his eyes. The rivals stood opposite each other, and the hedgehog did not understand what was happening at all. The guy attacked sharply. He twitched as he saw a paw approaching him. The student received a blow and flew away. The adventurer crossed his arms in front of him. Then he pushed off the crystal. Its power cracked the surface. The young man's fist slammed into the beast's muzzle. Behind one head, the monster's entire body fell backwards. However, another mouth has already appeared next to Haruto. Teeth sank into the hero's hand, and he cried out. He closed his eyes and clenched his jaw. The enemy slammed it into the wall. The young man hit himself and sighed sharply. The toy looked at him anxiously and called out. The guy sat down on the ground, and the mentor shouted at him to get ready. All three heads were preparing to attack with magic. The hero opened his eyes, from which light emanated. The space around him was covered with blue energy, and the student decided that he would show everything he could. A ball sparkled in the monster's mouth. A powerful beam shot towards the opponent. The brunette continued to sit, looking in front of him. From the bright light, his silhouette became blurred. 3 beams struck forward. However, at this moment, Haruto found himself on the side of the beast, swinging and hoping that its body would endure. The adventurer frowned and concentrated his energy. The young man unleashed a series of blows on the enemy. Suddenly he twitched in pain, and blood spurted from his hand. The hero gritted his teeth and remembered that the monster had bitten him earlier. Cerberus grinned and swung his paw. Haruto clenched his second fist. He frowned and struck. The enemy was thrown back. The beast opened its mouth and howled. The guy pushed off the ground. He swung his leg, hovering over his opponent. Haruto narrowed his eyes and shouted that this was his end. A powerful attack fell on the monster. The main character stood over the body of the enemy. The young man turned pale and asked if he had always been so strong. At these words, the guy staggered and fell, and the system announced that the B-rank Azabu dungeon had been completed. Haruto opened his eyes. He looked to the side as the voice asked if he had finally woken up. A hedgehog stood over him. The hero stood up and muttered that it seemed that he had defeated the enemy after all. The brunette looked at the notification that the level had been raised by 20, and then noticed that he had received the cloak of a space and time mage. He scratched his head and decided that he would try it on later. Haruto looked away. In front of him stood Cerberus. The guy jumped up and jumped away. The beast looked at the adventurer in admiration and wagged its tail. The brunette stared at him uncomprehendingly. The former opponent stuck out his tongue. The student then stretched out his hand uncertainly. Cerberus poked at her happily. The main character squatted down to stroke the monster, and the toy noticed that he liked it. The hedgehog narrowed his eyes and said that he would never have thought that everything would turn out this way, but the guy received the award, so he should be grateful. Haruto looked at him and asked if he was talking about equipment. Cerberus stood up, and the interlocutor stated that he meant to summon sacred beast, which is the ultimate reward for completing the crystal labyrinth. The hedgehog looked at his former boss and explained that they had yet to sign a contract, and if the young man gave his blood, he would serve him. Haruto bit his finger. Then he dripped it on the animal's tongue. The monster's body began to dissolve, and the mentor said that now the hero will be able to summon him at any time, so they got what they came for. 3 days later, the Adventurers Academy. Haruto walked down the alley, and the schoolchildren around him whispered as they looked at him. There were abrasions on the young man's face and even a plaster. Rina spotted her friend in front of her and called out to him. She looked at him anxiously and asked where he had disappeared and what had happened. The brunette turned around and replied that he had specially trained for the duel. The classmate raised her eyebrows and asked again, wondering what he was doing that looked so bad. Haruto clenched his fist and declared that he was ready. The girl looked at him and wondered if this was still the young man she knew. The guy closed his eyes and moved on. A blond man watched them from above, muttering that he expected that his opponent had long since fled. Ryuga grinned and said that he had come here to be pitted by everyone. The main character and his girlfriend approached the opponent. The president of the student council made a gesture with his hand and announced that the duel would take place today after school. He smirked and wondered if the mysterious dragon slayer had gathered his strength. The brunette knitted his eyebrows and replied in the affirmative. Ryuga arched an eyebrow and reminded him of the stupid condition. Haruto nodded and repeated that the loser was expelled. The rivals looked at each other, and the blonde said that it was somehow boring. He adjusted his cloak with a graceful gesture. Then he smiled and offered to put 100 million credits at stake. The main character rounded his eyes in surprise. The students began to press on him, demanding that he agree, and laughed. The hedgehog looked out of the bag. He remembered the mages and thought that Ryuga was using other apprentices so that Haruto couldn't refuse. The toy rammed among the things, puffed out her cheeks, noting that the enemy was cunning, as always. Rene grabbed her friend's sleeve. The blond man grinned and thought that he would take everything from him and make him his slave. The girl looked at the hero in alarm and muttered that this was too much, but Haruto easily agreed to the condition. The president turned around and smiled. He waved his hand and said that he was very much looking forward to a duel. The guy went the other way, saying that Rina had taken the wrong side, so let him prepare for a private lesson. The girl pursed her lips and sweated. She looked up at the main character when he asked not to worry. He smiled resolutely and declared that he would definitely win. The guy put on his jacket. After school, he was walking down the corridor and heard a voice from the envelope that it was duel time, to which he replied that he knew. Haruto looked ahead questioningly. There was a crowd of schoolchildren in front of him. One of them said, "What a coincidence. Why don't he entertain them before going to Ryuga?" A guy with a spear standing behind said that each of them was promised 1,000,000 credits for beating him. The hero with the band-aid on his face was silent. The schoolchildren surrounded him from behind. I heard what it was. He was frightened. Even tears would not help him. Opening his mouth, the hero said something quietly. The opponent frowned. Touching his hair with his hand, Haruto explained that he was glad that he was using the old tricks he had been preparing for. So trivial that it looked like a cliché, now he could beat them up without regret. His eyes lit up, and he said that he was counting on his rightful share in the first place. The opponent thrust his sword forward. Swinging, he angrily shouted that he should not be impudent. A hand grabbed his face. Haruto slammed him hard to the ground. His eyes glowed blue. He called it a break. Standing opposite the others, the hero ordered to attack all together. People gathered in the center of the arena in the Adventurers Academy. Ryuga proudly asked what kind of dragon lover he was. So much boasting, and in the end, he didn't come, a waste of time. With a wave of his hand, the blonde man told the judge that if he didn't show up in a minute, he would automatically be the winner, whether he agreed. The guy with glasses smiled and said that he was stupid for going against him. The second added that he probably just ran away. Ryuga smiled slyly and thought that his servants had probably already dealt with him. An anxious Rinne sat in the stands and thought about Haruto. The guy turned around and said that he was here. Turning sharply, Ryuga saw the main character. He stood confidently, putting his hands in his pockets, and heard the question what he was doing here. Looking straight ahead, Haruto asked what was wrong. They were already in a duel. The surprised blonde said yes. The bodies of his henchmen were left lying in the corridor. The hero standing in the smoke said that okay. With a confident look, he offered to start. Turning to the referee, Haruto asked for a signal to start. Ryuga frowned in displeasure when he heard that the student of Class 3A. There was a band-aid on the boy's face. He heard that he was against a student of Class 2F. The blonde gritted his teeth in displeasure, thinking that he did not know how he did it. He stood opposite and thought that he would personally stop him here and now. He pursed his fingers. Waving his hand, Ryuga shouted that he would not hold back. Whirlwinds of flame swirled around. Putting out his hand, the guy insidiously asked if he was ready for a real battle. Haruto stood in front of him and pondered that he would start with the Hellfire Fire spell, this high-level magic. A glow appeared above the palm. Putting his hands forward, the blonde man wished him death. There was a sly smile on his face. He thought that he had put everything into this spell. If he hit, he would die immediately. Lightning flew from Haruto's eyes. He imagined the intersecting elements and thought that damn, lightning is the most warped by the passage of time. As he progresses, he can see their past position and where they will end up in a second if he watched them closely. The fireball was approaching the hero. However, he dodged them, one by one. The flames flew near his face. The hero confidently moved forward. He was standing in the middle of black smoke. Ryuga said that it was impossible. His foot touched the ground. Haruto frowned down. Then he jumped high, dodging the flash. A volley of fire flew over his head. The opponent standing in front of the flames shouted that even his double attack didn't work. It couldn't be. The look of the blonde man was surprised. Blue rays flew from Haruto's palms, and he aimed it at his opponent. Magic struck Ryuga in the chest. He was lying in a crack on the ground, and the audience shouted that this could not be. What kind of technique was it? Did he know magic? An admiring Rinne exclaimed that it was wonderful. The guy calmly looked down, and she thought she knew that Haruto had changed. Pulling his hand aside, the brunette reminded him that he was going not to give in. The guy in the white cloak was holding his hand. His eyes lit up red. Ryuga jumped to direct the fire, and yelled for him not to anger him. The blows flew towards Haruto, who thought it was the Fire Dragon Fist, a melee attack with a flame temperature of 3000 degrees Celsius. Slyly looking at how he clenched his fingers, Ryuga thought that he was a fool. He would destroy everything he touched, including him, let only ashes remain. The guy made a hook to his opponent. The shocked blonde fell to the floor. He gritted his teeth. Haruto swung his fist. The enraged opponent shouted. A fist broke the floor next to his head. Haruto's hand was smoking, and he explained that he had put out the fire. The high school student jumped back, saying that he was trash and would lose anyway. Looking in the direction of his henchmen, he thought that they knew what to do. Flames appeared in their palms, and they mentally replied to him that of course. A fire symbol appeared above the blonde's head. He closed his eyes with a satisfied look. The hero from the future asked. The audience was transferring their powers to him and amplifying his magic. Such an obvious violation of the rules that it was even funny. Looking at the high school student surrounded by fire, Haruto asked how much more alien power he needed. Ryuga's eyes burned with flames, and he giggled angrily. One of his legs turned into a dragon-like paw as he used the invincible secret technique. A bright spark appeared ahead. A huge beam of flame rose in the arena. Haruto stared at him, his mouth open in surprise. The fire surrounded a horned silhouette. Ryuga turned into a huge monster, the embodiment of the fire demon. The voice said that it was a giant monster that had accumulated the strength of several dozen students from the magic course. It just couldn't cope with it. Opening his mouth, Haruto said that he knew. A huge jet of flame shot out from the demon's mouths. The guy managed to jump to the side. Putting his hand forward, he aimed the chrono beam at him. The heroes looked forward attentively. The body of the fang monster was smoking a little, and the brunette thought that it was nothing at all. The paw formed into something similar to a paw. A lot of fiery paws reached out to the guy. They surrounded his body. There was a wall behind him. Haruto turned around in surprise, realizing that he had nowhere to run. Demonic flames surrounded him from all sides. Lightning appeared from the hero's eyes. Looking at the huge demon, he thought that something strange was going on with the passage of time. He looked at the figure of the monster, and thought that there was a hole in it. The hero took a closer look and thought that if he made the gap bigger, there was a crack on the ground from the blow of the paw. A blue slit appeared on it. Surrounded by the radiance, Haruto swung his sword, and then he jumped aside. Spreading his legs wide, he asked to use a soft toy. The voice from the envelope was indignant. Pink Teddy Hedgehog agreed, saying that he had no choice. The hero was holding a disgruntled toy. Then he threw her, surrounded by chains. Lightning flew from the tramp of his foot. The chains slid on the ground, and the guy moved forward. He jumped high. He lowered his blue eyes. There was a blue line on the monster's head. He thought that this was it, a break in the flow of time. The guy swung his sword and shouted. He swiftly sliced the demon from top to bottom, then landed behind. A surprised Ryuga remained standing on the platform. He grabbed his hair, asking what it was. Pointing with his hand, he shouted in bewilderment that this was impossible. As long as they were rooting for him, the monster would appear again and again. He hid behind the judge in fright, asking why he did not appear. Grabbing the guy by the clothes, he continued that he did not know such magic. A blow of the fist flew into the blonde's stomach. He was lying on the ground unconscious. The judge was frightened when the hero looked at him. Haruto stood with his sword over his shoulder, and heard that he was the winner. Rina got up from the table. Putting her hands on her belt, she said that we could get started. Confetti scattered everywhere along with congratulations on the hero's victory in the duel. Haruto put his hand behind his head, thanking them. Taking the glass in her hand, the girl asked to honor them. The others also took drinks. Raising his glass, Haruto offered a drink. The others happily repeated after him. The girls looked at each other with a smile. One of them rested her head on her hands, saying that she felt much better, and that she was glad that he would be leaving school. The other looked at her, saying that the guy treated everyone as his property. Her friends supported her, adding that he tried to solve everything with money, and also constantly harassed her. Rina smiled a little shyly when she heard that a little more, and she would fall into his hands. Haruto glanced at one of them when asked about 100 million loans. The guy took a sip. Putting down the glass, he replied that he had completely forgotten about it. All the girls looked at him, saying that they were sorry. Looking at the drink, the hero added that he was not chasing money. They looked at him in love. Haruto glanced away. Akane covered her mouth with her hand, asking what she was doing with Rina. That girl jumped out her drink. She looked at her friend in confusion, not understanding what she was talking about. Showing her thumb, Akane clarified that it was because of her that he went into a duel. Everyone looked at the hero again, wanting to know what was between them and whether they were dating. Haruto looked into his glass again. The girls were fascinated by the answer. Getting up from the table, he said that he would go away for a while. Akane frowned, saying that he ran away, and it's a shame. The two girls looked at each other, discussing that he had changed, becoming some kind of adult, although only recently he had been quite quiet. Rina picked up the sparrow in surprise. She remembered herself as a child, reflecting on the fact that from that day on, the hero had always helped her. Then she hid behind his back. Now, holding the glass, she was sure that it would always be like this. There was a noticeable embarrassment on her face. Imagining him protecting her recently, she thought about how they even had a common secret. Remembering how the enemy had been defeated, she also remembered the words that it was only between them. At that moment, an explosion sounded behind Haruto. Now the hero was standing in the restroom and heard that a new message had arrived. He glanced at the phone screen, the video about how she was very sorry and that the girls went too far with questions, asking him not to invent anything. A slight smile appeared on his face. Haruto looked in the mirror, noting that it had been a long time since life had been so bright. His hand clenched slightly. Remembering how he sat with his family at the table, he thought that this would never happen again. Raising his head, the guy suggested that the future could change. The toy appeared behind him. Turning around, Haruto told him that they would be going home soon, so he should be quiet for a while. But looking at him, the interlocutor said that it was urgent. The hero was a little surprised to hear that the time had come. Standing in front of him, he clarified what he was talking about. A long shadow fell from the toy, and he replied that he would tell him the real reason why he was there. Haruto frowned slightly, hearing that it was about his younger sister. Imagining her face, he also heard that she was actually alive. Haruto was visibly worried. He recalled the explosion in the sky, replying that Ria had died a long time ago. Her name was inscribed on the gravestone. Frowning, the toy replied that this is not the case in this world. Turning to the mirror, he told the guy to get ready. Then, frowning, he added that they would save her. His sister came up to him, wanting to show him something. A red scarf appeared in the girl's hands. Looking at him, Haruto said that he looked very warm, asking if she had knitted him herself. Ria happily waved it, answering that she had done everything herself, tying him up. Haruto sweetly looked at everything sternly, saying that he understood. She handed him the scarf, noting that it was for him. The guy looked at the scarf in surprise, only answering that he was interested in how it would look on it. The girl, upset, asked if he liked him. Haruto put his hand behind his head, replying that of course he liked him. Then Ria smiled. Tying it around her neck, she said that he could just take it silently. Looking at the scarf, the guy listened to the fact that the loops are a little loose. Putting her hands on her belt, my sister said that tomorrow was Christmas. Bringing the toy mustache to her face, she added that it was a gift for him. Touching the scarf, the hero thanked her. Sitting next to her, Ria offered to throw a party a day later, when she returned from the concert. Smiling sweetly, she added that then he would also give her something. Later, he waved to the whole family, reflecting on how he could not keep his promise in the end, because the next morning, the plane with her and her parents crashed and they did not return. Haruto stared silently at the closed door. Now he opened his eyes abruptly, hearing the question if he was listening to the interlocutor. The toy sat next to him. Haruto noticed a scarf nearby. Next to him was a photo of his family. Looking down, the guy asked for forgiveness and repeated the words. The interlocutor jumped onto the table, telling him to pull himself together and that he had a task to complete that could not be failed. Bringing his hand to his face, the hero replied that he knew about it, but wanted to clarify why his sister was alive at all. Frowning, the guy noted that all the passengers died in that accident, and therefore it could not be that she was alive. Haruto looked inquiringly at the hedgehog, who asked about what he knew about the disaster, and replied that only that something broke at high altitude. Taking a step, the interlocutor said that perhaps everything looked like this, but this is beyond his understanding. The hero furrowed his brows. Looking at him, the hedgehog said that a space-time hole had opened in the sky that day. Haruto folded his hands when he heard that she connected different worlds. The toy presented bright lines in the sky, saying that even in the future, it is impossible to predict where it will appear. He then imagined the hole, saying that it had disrupted the gravitational field, and unfortunately, the plane was flying nearby, but the pilot lost control of it due to the gravitational field and crashed shortly after. Opening his mouth wide, the guy said that this could not be, and even if it was, all the passengers were still killed. Looking at him seriously, the hedgehog replied that the guy remembers that no one survived, but his sister's body was not found. Standing on the table, he added that, in other words, she had fallen into a space-time hole. Haruto visibly tensed. Imagining a bright light, the toy said that this road leads to the gap between the worlds, and time and space there do not obey the rules of this world. Ria in the photo was smiling when he talked about how many years had passed in this world. Less than a second had passed for her. Still frowning, the hedgehog said that when the space-time hole reopened, his sister would return to this world. The guy put his hand on his chest, and the interlocutor said that this is why he is here now. Looking at him, the hero heard that in the future he had found a point where the worlds intersected, but it was too late. The hedgehog spread his hands. Haruto opened his mouth in surprise when he heard that he had to save her. The hero frowned again. Getting up from the couch, he replied that he understood everything, and asked where this space-time hole would appear. Imagining the white clouds, he replied that it would be high above the Tokyo Tower, above the upper floor of the Sky Fortress dungeon. The bright sun shone on the tall tower. The two of them looked at her. Looking in the direction of the guy, the hedgehog said that he would never have thought that he had bought all these strange items in the adventure shop. Looking ahead, Haruto replied that it was all thanks to the huge amount of money he received for the crystal maze. The guy closed his eyes when he heard the words about this scarf, and that it was mid-July. After correcting him, he replied that he could not stand the cold. One toy just lowered her gaze. Seeing the floor on the tower, he said that the gate to the heavenly fortress was on the observation deck. Imagining the rift, he added that in 0400, it would open again at a height of 300 meters above the upper floor of the heavenly fortress. Haruto looked at the system window, heard that his sister would appear from there. Introducing Ria, the interlocutor noted that if he did not make it in time, it would fall and crash. The hero clenched his fist, answering that he knew about it. He clicked on the system window. His body was swirling in a bright glow. The hedgehog climbed on his shoulder, and he said that he would definitely save her. The TV tower was illuminated by the bright sun. Seeing the hero, two soldiers stopped him. The guy came closer to them when he heard that a gate to the dungeon had appeared on the observation deck, and only adventurers with a higher rank were allowed to enter. He had to leave them. Looking at the tower, he heard the question of what he would do now, and replied that since there was no time, they would shorten the way. There was a loud stamping. Haruto jumped up. Catching on one of the beams, he listened to the fact that he was starting to behave like his companion, and replied that it was beginning to annoy. He ended up on the ledge of the platform. The hero peeked through the window. Inside, he saw Kurigane. Looking at the man with a group of soldiers, he heard that he had only problems, asking his companion if he knew him. Seeing Kurigane giving orders, he replied that he was now the guild master, as well as stubborn and too serious. A squad of soldiers stood behind him. He also said that he would check the entire area in front of the gate, and wait for the situation to change. A bright light emanated from the gate. Haruto noted that they do not have time for this and they need to go. A ball appeared in his hand. Hearing a loud sound, Kurigane asked about what it was. Glancing at one of the soldiers, he ordered to see what was happening. Looking at the window, he was sure that it had broken, but everything seemed to be fine. Haruto appeared behind him. The guy stabbed him. The soldier fell to the floor. The hero thought that he had used physical rewind to make the window whole again. He straightened his scarf, deciding it was time to go. A man standing near the portal heard that they had problems. The soldier put his hand to his head, saying that he had checked and there was someone here, as well as someone who was too strong. Frowning, Kurigane said that he would deal with him himself. Several soldiers followed him after hearing the order. One of them remained standing. He touched the glasses of his helmet. Haruto, managed to disguise himself as a soldier. The hedgehog noted a good plan. They came to the gate. The hero went inside. His eyes widened in surprise. Haruto stood upside down, realizing that the world was upside down. Seeing the gray walls in front of him, the hero heard that he needed to go down the steps in the heavenly fortress, which meant that he needed to climb up, to which he noted that although it was called a dungeon, it was in the sky. Hedgehog frowned, saying that the theme of the dungeon was occult. He would be attacked by zombies and ghosts. Closing his eyes, the hero noted that this was ironic. A weapon appeared in his hand, and he said that it would be hard for him as a swordsman in such an environment, to which the toy replied that he had already taken care of it, asking if he remembered the element they had inserted into his sword. He remembered the system message with the selection of an element for the alloy. Then he chose the zipper. They looked at the passage ahead. The companion noted that that was why he had come at that time, and now they had to go. Haruto rushed forward. Something caught his attention. The monster appeared in front of him. He raised his weapon to attack. Taking a strong step, the guy heard that during his companion, this dungeon disappeared almost immediately after it was discovered, so no one entered it. Haruto startled several more enemies upon hearing that the other person did have some information. Dust rose from under his feet, saying that the heavenly fortress consists of 100 floors. Enemies disintegrated behind his back when the hedgehog said that a strong boss, which could not be avoided, was guarding the 20th floor. Rushing forward, Haruto calculated that there were 5 bosses per floor. Looking at the phone screen, he saw that there were 20 hours left, and he couldn't waste time on petty battles. The hero looked ahead in shock. There were many monsters in front of him. There was no end to the zombie army. They opened their mouths wide and pumped. They pounced on him. The crowd of monsters continued to advance. A sound was heard among them. A bright flash scattered several. The beast's eye shone brightly. Cerberus stood behind Haruto, talking about how they didn't have time and needed to destroy everyone as quickly as possible. The zombies pounced on them. The claws of the beast left bright marks. Looking behind him, the guy noted that it was fast. Holding on to his shoulder, the hedgehog said that, as the name of the summoned beast implied, he was sacred, and his attacks were inherently holy. A crowd of zombies appeared in front of them, and they decided that they needed to move on. Later, there were many reports that they were moving to the floor higher and higher. A new message notified that they had moved to the 20th floor of the dungeon. Cerberus' claws slid across the floor. Haruto, who was sitting on it, asked what it was. The guy looked up. A red sphere appeared under the ceiling. The hero dismounted from the animal, heard about bosses appearing every 20 floors, and replied that he had to defeat them in order to make his way to the next floor. A carriage flew over his head and descended. The wheels touched the ground. Someone's foot touched the step. More steps followed the unknown. So the fallen nobleman appeared in front of him with his wife and son. The 3 bowed to him as he thought they were 3A rank undead bosses. Frowning, Haruto decided that it didn't matter, because if he couldn't even win, then how would he save his sister? Looking ahead, the hedgehog warned that they were attacking. The woman released lightning. The others rushed into battle. The guy told his companion to hide, to which he clarified that he wanted to use what he bought in the guild store. The toy jumped away when the hero replied that it was so. A magic circle appeared in front of his eye. He saw the son of a nobleman attacking. I also noticed a wave in front of the woman. The nobleman himself held a cane in his hand, and the hero thought that he saw the passage of time and how they were going to attack. Haruto pulled his hand aside. Several magical daggers flew towards the enemy, but the enemy smiled ominously as he waved, and the hero summoned a few more. The guy pushed off the ground. Rushing forward, he struck the woman, leaving a bright mark near her, and then threw a dagger at the nobleman. The weapon hit him in the chest. The hero dodged the attack with his cane. Another blow threw him back. Haruto braked with his hand. He slipped back a bit, deciding that he was now in a great position. His eyes lit up brightly. Putting his hand forward, Haruto noted that he was at the perfect distance from them and used an explosion. The hero clenched his fist. The daggers in the bodies of the enemies began to glow brightly. A loud explosion sounded. Clouds of dust rose everywhere. The hedgehog noted that each knife is made from the rarest materials of the dungeon, and these are incredibly rare items, each of which costs 100,000 credits. Looking intently ahead, the companion noted that they become explosive, especially when an electric current passes through them, and the guy throws them around so easily. Frowning, he noted that it was not profitable to win battles, throwing away every 1,000,000 credits. After adjusting the scarf, Haruto replied that there was more to it. Seeing their dark silhouettes, he thought that he had only destroyed their physical bodies, and now they had returned in ghost form. The ghosts rushed towards him, and he realized that it was almost impossible to damage a monster of this type with physical attacks. The sword took on a bright glow as he realized that it had also exposed their vulnerability. Haruto rushed forward again. He raised his weapon above his head. A few strokes left bright traces. The ghosts crumbled to pieces. Their remains were being burned to ashes. There are new system reports that the noble family has been defeated, and the level of the Switch Seeker has increased, and 2 million credits have been obtained. A descent appeared in front of him. The hero approached the stairs. Looking down, Haruto asked his sister to wait as her older brother came to help. Cerberus opened its mouth wide. He clung to the enemy. The dead queen opened her mouth wide and screamed. Haruto stared at the beast. The guy approached him. Stroking one of the heads, he praised him for his good work, to which the hedgehog remarked that he looked more like a pet than a sacred beast. So, they have 3 bosses left. A new message notified that this is the 50th floor of the Sky Fortress. His companion told him to stop. The beast's paws slid across the ground. Looking at the high wall, the guy did not understand why they were stopping here. Looking out from behind him, he replied that it could not be a mistake. Remembering the magic circle near the eye, he said to activate this skill and look at the wall. The hero's eyes began to glow brightly. He noticed something. A door was visible behind the wall, and the guy said that it was a hidden room, to which he heard that in the time of his companion, this dungeon disappeared before anyone could enter it. Moving into the envelope, he also added that at this time it could be passed by asking for a letter to be inserted between the stones in the wall, as he had done last time. Haruto held the envelope up to the wall. Turning to Cerberus, he ordered us to wait. In the middle of the room, a bright crystal was introduced. Looking at him inattentively, the hero wondered if his companion would deceive him this time. The latter, holding on to his shoulder, replied that he would not do that, and there was nothing to worry about. A message appeared near the crystal that its effect when interacting with it reveals hidden or suppressed skills. Haruto touched him. Several fragments shimmered brightly with color. There are new messages notifying you when you have acquired several skills. The hero looked at his hands. Looking at the system windows, the hedgehog was surprised that he already had a repeat avatar, to which the guy wanted to know what it was. As they were leaving, the companion replied that he could experience it in battle. Later, a message appeared that they were on the 60th floor of the dungeon. A huge insect was flying in front of him. Haruto asked what his weakness was. Worms crawled out of the boss's eye. Sputnik replied that it was a flying monster that spits a liquid that melts everything, and has the ability to regenerate, as well as stink. Covering his face with his hand, Haruto noted that he was simply describing him. Something caught his attention. The monster aimed its sting at him. It amazed the guy. The sting came out over his back. The hero's silhouette began to fade, and he heard that new skills came in handy. The monster was surprised at the disappeared man. But when he saw him, he rushed to attack again. Haruto pulled his hand to the side, using the avatar repeat. Entering the approach of the enemy, he also applied acceleration. The stinger was near him, but the hero managed to move quickly. A stamping sound sounded from under his foot. A bright line appeared in the room. The guy had heard that repeating the avatar creates a clone from the past. The copy moved next to him, so it temporarily protected him. Next to the copy, another one appeared. So several clones surrounded the monster. Weapons appeared in the hand of each of them. They all rushed to attack. Other clones also rushed into battle. They attacked the boss with a chaos meteor. The monster was surprised to see them approach. He spat out his liquid. Clones disappeared under her influence. Some managed to bypass it. Bright rays struck the enemy. Light lines spread across his body. Haruto thrust his weapon forward. A hedgehog standing next to him said that the guy could now call himself a ninja, to which he replied that this was not his style. Noticing the stairs, he said that there were 2 fingers left. Haruto walked in her direction. Suddenly he put his hand on his head. The hero fell to his knees. After that, he was lying on the floor unconscious. The action takes place 3 years ago. The main character sits with a sad face. The little sister looks at him and begs for something. Haruto still sits indifferently, his arms crossed. The girl is next to him and assures that she will try very hard and will not leave halfway. With a pleading look, she asks him again. The protagonist sighs, closing his eyes. The girl has a magazine in her hands. He asks if she really wants to do ballet. The joyful sister exclaims that she really wants to. The guy with a disgruntled face sighs, but agrees with her, saying that she needs to choose shoes that she likes and show him. She enthusiastically raises her hands and glows with happiness. The girl is looking at a magazine with clothes for the ballet with interest. The main character smiles sweetly, watching his dear sister. Buildings in the city are shown. Happy girls are engaged in dancing. A smiling sister in a workout uniform raises her hand and thanks her for waiting, stating that she is now ready. Her friends have surrounded her and are very happy that she has joined them. Ria turns around with a sweet smile. He sees someone and waves his small hand with an enthusiastic look. It turns out that Haruto is standing in the doorway and greeting his sister. Her friends laugh mischievously. Noticing that she is probably deifying her brother, she is furious and asks to stop saying this. The main character watches the training of the girls. Ria diligently teaches ballroom movements. The girl and other students repeat after their teacher. She stands right on her tiptoe. A happy Ria looks back at her brother as she performs these moves. A satisfied older brother watches her, realizing that she likes it very much. At the end of the training, she says goodbye to her friends. The protagonist sees her off. An enthusiastic girl walks down the street with him and exclaims how much she liked dancing. She enthusiastically says that ballet is quite difficult, but she will try. The main character agrees with her with a slight smile and praises her for the work done. Ria looks up at him in amazement. Suddenly, she stops and turns to Haruto. MC turns when he is asked that the shoes and lessons are most likely very expensive. Smiling, the protagonist says that this is not true at all. His sister holds her small bag, having heard from him that she should not worry. They are walking down the evening street. The girl says that since the moment her parents went abroad for a conference. The main character walks with a serious look, hearing the question that he has been paying for everything with his own money since that time. Excited, Haruto closes his eyes, wondering if she really thought of it. A sad girl looks at her brother, who assures that everything is fine and there is no need to worry. She opens her eyes in surprise, because her brother asks if she really liked everything. The main character benevolently says that he is happy that she found what she wants to do, because this is what he has always wanted. She looks at him enthusiastically. He clutches his bag in his hands. The embarrassed sister looks at him with loving eyes and thanks him for such words. The protagonist smiles slightly in response. The girl grabs him by the hand and enthusiastically shouts that she loves him very much. He exclaims that it is dangerous to do so. They walk in an embrace by the road. Ria says that it is not dangerous, and they will always be, so today she will cook him something to show how much she loves him. MC opens his eyes. He lies on a huge blue pet that looks like a wolf. A soft toy sits nearby and clarifies that he has finally woken up. The sleepy protagonist scratches his head, asking that he passed out. He is told that he is, because he used too much energy. Haruto points his finger at the screen, asking his companion what will happen if he uses a high-ranking elixir he bought from the guild shop, and the assistant objects. The blue predator lies next to the adventurer, who says that all the wounds have already healed, but there is nothing to be done about emotional fatigue. The guy, frowning, asks what about the time. The angry companion replies that there are 5 hours left. The main character gets up from the floor and says that you need to go. A determined MC looks ahead and mentally makes a promise to Ria that he will take her to the ballet again. The little helper stands near his leg and is silent. The protagonist moves forward. The stuffed animal stands behind and thinks about the fact that only one of the 5 bosses remains and the final one will appear after them. The image of the beaten Haruto is shown. The companion realizes that the guy will not be enough at this rate. The soft toy resolutely understands that there is no choice left. In a huge arena, a ferocious monster stands in front of a fighter. The action takes place in a sky fortress on the 80th floor. The Acid Mummy King, one of the 5 bosses, screams in a rage. Suddenly, chunks of ice fly around him. The protagonist, holding out his hand in front of him, uses the skill of space-time magic, a gravitational beam. The system states that the monster is damaged, and the adventurer's level is increased by 2, as well as the skill of possession, while receiving 3.5 million credits. Haruto sighs tiredly. Behind him stands a blue beast. The main character strokes the joyful Cerberus and thanks him. Suddenly, the guy feels green energy. In the system window there is a choice whether he wants to use the elixir. MC looks on nervously. A stuffed animal with a smirk asks if he wants to rest. Haruto objects with a serious look. Because they are short on time, there are only 3 hours left. The guys are standing in the middle of the arena on the floor. The protagonist offers to go to the top floor. The system notification says that he has reached the 100th floor of the Heavenly Fortress. On the ceiling you can see dark space and the planet. The startled guy looks up and asks that they are now in space. The companion replies that it's time to fight the boss of the dungeon. They stand in front of a giant gate, and he is told that after that he will be able to get to where the space-time hole will open. The guy with a serious look needs his fist. The companion and Haruto's eyes glow blue. They are determined to go. A mysterious scoundrel sits on a throne in front of them. A carpet is in front of them. A large skeleton with an energy crown sits silently on a throne. It has black furs and white bones. He wears a gold bracelet on his arm and a real crown. The system states that he is the main boss god of the underworld, the Soul Ripper. The skeleton's eyes light up with red fire. The protagonist and his assistant see this in displeasure. A fighter stands in front of a giant monster, a stuffed toy claiming that this mutant is not even in the archives of his world. The hand of the Soul Ripper is on the throne. He asks if a man really came to him, and even completely alone. The wary guys hear this. The main character asks if they really have a highly intelligent creature capable of perceiving speech. The main boss of the floor radiates dark energy, arrogantly says that for one of the low human race, whose representatives can only huddle in packs and fight enemies, it is quite commendable to come here alone. He reaches out with his bony hand to the weapon, which emits purple smoke. The main character in response to this reaches for his blade. Opponents appear before each other. The sinister monster angrily declares that he is the god of the underworld, then offers to start, adding that the protagonist should rejoice, because he uses the deadliest weapons. Frowning, the soft toy declares that this weapon is in the archives. A sacred side commanding curses is shown. The companion explains that it is used by high-ranking illusion mages. The alloy causes psychic distortions and applies a debuff, so it is very dangerous. Haruto, without changing his expression, claims that he doesn't care at all. His eyes light up blue, exclaiming that he will now defeat the enemy. A purple core shines in the skeleton's chest. The main character notices that this is the weak point. The protagonist's legs begin to radiate mana. Standing in front of the monster, it absorbs energy, starting to use the third level of acceleration. Haruto, holding the hilt of the blade, goes on the attack with lightning speed. The main boss follows him and notes his speed. The fighter approaches the opponent by swinging his sword. Suddenly, the guy sees the tip of a scythe in front of him. The skeleton hits the ground, the stones scatter to the sides. The protagonist deftly jumped, thereby dodging such an attack. The ferocious protagonist flies down, about to strike again. The monster's weak point shines brighter and brighter. The point of the sword tends straight to the skeleton. The monster deftly repels his attack with his scythe. A small explosion occurs. Haruto sees the main boss emit purple energy. A skeleton with a crown attacks him in a rage. MC stands on the ground and sees the scythe approaching. Suddenly, the main character went into another state. A scythe passed through him. The boss, frowning his red eyes, remarks that this is simply a fake. Suddenly, the main character is right behind him. He extends his hand using the stop chain skill. The energy chains instantly bind the king. The protagonist swings his mighty sword. The chains restrain the skeleton, but the system window says that a curse of this type will not work on a god. Suddenly, the chains shatter into pieces. Haruto is shocked to see this. The pieces of chains turn red. The ferocious main boss sees the opponent. The protagonist is horrified to notice the approach of an enemy attack. He dodges skillfully, lowering his body lower. Grasps the floor with the palm of his hand. In an instant, he bounces off an approaching enemy. The tired fighter looks at the king, who claims that he was able to dodge the sacred scythe twice, so apparently he is very confident. The arrogant king claims that after all, he is just an inferior form of life that has to grovel instead of flying. The giant skeleton is much taller than the guy. He asks if he should cut off his legs. The monster's eyes sparkle red even brighter. It uses the cursed dimension. Suddenly, the discouraged protagonist feels the effect of this attack. The guy is upside down. Haruto sees an upside-down skeleton. The bewildered protagonist asks if he is upside down again. The skeleton grins ominously, red flames bursting out of its eyes. Suddenly, the floor begins to crumble into pieces. The main character notices this. He falls into this hole, realizing that things are bad. The protagonist flies on, realizing that it was not easy for him to climb to the 100th floor, and now he falls. The Soul Ripper swings his sacred scythe, claiming that he will no longer be able to move so easily. Gritting his teeth, the guy gets nervous. The evil king strikes with a scythe. An energy blade appears in the hand of the main character. He mentally calms himself, realizing that he just needs to try. He points his blade at the enemy and shouts for an explosion. A powerful flow of blue energy resists the attack of the scythe. The main character hits his back right against the wall. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist notices that there is a wall there. He stabs his sword hard into the wall. The guy rises, holding on to the handle. A skeleton with a scythe sees MC go down. Haruto looks around excitedly. The main character is hovering in place, holding on to the blade. He realizes that this whole thing with the fall is just the magic of illusion. In a flashback, the Soul Ripper used the skill. The guy realizes that he has fallen into a trap, while thinking about how to undo the curse. His gaze is alert and directed forward. The sinister king spews violet energy and thereby turns into a powerful attack. It opens its mouth, from which smoke comes out. At the last moment, the fighter jumps away from this stream, which crashes directly into the wall. Part of the protagonist's leg falls into the smoke. He is frightened to see a pink substance consume his leg. The Soul Ripper claims that it will be his last experiment. The protagonist, sticking a blade, hangs below. He is told that the anger of the dead will destroy him. A pink aura spreads through the body. The monster wonders what will kill it first. The cursed side shines purple. The scoundrel wonders if it will be hatred of his own kind. The king looks ahead ominously, assuming that perhaps this scythe will kill him. Pink mana approaches the protagonist's head. He hangs on the blade, realizing that he needs to get out of here urgently, but it is not clear how to do it. The ferocious floor boss looks down. With a cunning smile, he says goodbye to the pathetic fighter. He swings his giant scythe, unleashing a powerful stream of dark energy. The smoke gets to the face of the main character, who wonders if this is how it will really end. His sister is in his mind calling him by name. Closing his eyes, the protagonist desperately talks about Rhea. A powerful opponent attacks confidently. Suddenly, he is stopped by level 78 energy chains. Haruto opens his eyes in shock and does not believe what is happening. He looks around in surprise. There is a soft toy in front of him. The guy exclaims that this is his assistant. Frowning, the companion declares that this is his last chance. Suddenly, the toy begins to emit a bright stream of light. The companion's body is electrified, but his gaze is serious. The protagonist shields himself with his hand from such a bright flash. In the blinding light, you can see the guy's eye. A warrior dressed in a cloak appears in front of Haruto. He takes off his hood. As an adult, Haruto claims that it won't be very good if he dies because of him. The protagonist is shocked to see this. His older version at this time uses absolute rewind. Everything around has turned gray. The fighter wonders if time has really turned back. Suddenly, he finds himself in the middle of a void in which stones are flying. Suddenly, the blade returns from the wall. A giant crack in the floor is reassembled. The destroyed stones fly back to their previous position, just like the protagonist. The crack is gradually being repaired. The pieces fall back into place. The fighter again finds himself in front of the floor boss. They look at each other in complete shock. The Soul Ripper looks at him and asks how he cancelled the curse cast by the god. A warrior in a cloak and boots stands next to him. The older version of the protagonist states that he hasn't looked like this for a long time. The skeleton looks at them in a rage and wonders if they really think that the number will change anything. The Soul Ripper unleashes a massive flood of dark energy and anger as he screams for his best experiment to appear before them. Human hands reach out from the clouds of energy. Identical dolls come out of there with a grin. The skeleton, raising his arms up, forms a powerful vortex of energy, at the same time announcing that the god of the underworld will hand them over to the sacred judgment, while the fighter asks that the boss can create monsters of A+ rank. Standing towards the young version of Haruto, the warrior calls him to stand up. The adult protagonist calmly claims that he will deal with the change, and he is wearing a Soul Ripper. The agitated protagonist tries to say something. A crowd of evil dolls have gathered near the giant skeleton, MC explaining that he has the rank of god and is incredibly strong. The adult version of the protagonist calmly declares that there is no need to worry, because the guy has learned to control the magic of space and time, so he has a chance to win. The confident fighter claims that after all, the main character is him. Leaning on his sword, he gets up from the floor. The main character stands next to his adult version, declaring that he understands everything. The man puts his hand on his shoulder and urges him to listen to the plan. They whisper softly as they stand in front of the strongest Soul Ripper. The skeleton's arm moves forward. Thousands of sinister dolls with small sides fly forward. The king demands that they be destroyed immediately. Small monsters fly to attack, but suddenly they see a strong flash. The young protagonist runs swiftly forward. At this time, his older version rushes to the attack with lightning speed. Ferocious dolls see a goal in front of them. An older version of Haruto puts out his hand in front of him, about to do something. There are dozens of small monsters in front of him. He uses the gravity territory skill. The eyes of the villains are filled with hatred. Energy spheres are formed near the fighter. At this time he calls them loudly. He throws up his hands and shouts that he is their rival, so they should swoop in. Haruto is running with his blade in his hand. Small flying dolls chase him. The protagonist rushes on, while behind them, the older version makes an explosion. An assistant from the future puts his hand in front of him, using the acceleration field, and shouts that the guy almost succeeded. The main character steps on the floor. Energy traces are visible from his foot. The Soul Ripper sees the fighter approaching him. He declares that they are just nasty humans. Lightning bursts out of the eyes of the main character. They wish him death. Suddenly, dozens of red rays pierce the space, the floor boss using the cursed dimension. The guy feels the effect of this skill, shouting that he has already seen this technique. Soul Ripper is shocked to see Haruto smash his barrier and approach his head. MC flies to attack in anger. The skeleton emits pink smoke from its mouth, screaming that they are pathetic insects. The protagonist carefully assesses the situation and realizes that there is no point in attacking from behind. You need to take a shortcut. Their powerful attacks meet. Haruto thinks that his weak point is an open seam on the matter of time in the heart area. Powerful rays of blue and pink meet in front of their faces. The protagonist, frowning, dodges a chaos meteor flying right next to him. The ferocious skeleton growls as it notices. The villain unleashes dark energy again, shouting that a pathetic person should not get carried away. Red streams of mana fly at the protagonist. This skill is called the Edge of Damnation. Haruto feels 3 powerful blows directly to the chest. Blood spills out of the main character's mouth. He begins to cough in pain. The Soul Ripper stands in front of him and sees the protagonist split into 2 using avatar reproduction. The avatar falls to the floor covered in blood. The main character realizes that he cannot distribute and reduce damage. Suddenly, MC appears in front of the main boss. He is full of rage. Lightning bursts out of his eyes, screaming very loudly. Delivers a powerful blow directly to the heart of the skeleton. The monster opens its bony mouth and screams in pain. Suddenly, with a sinister grin, he looks at the main character. The protagonist is discouraged by this reaction to his attack. There is an ordinary hole inside the skeleton. The guy realizes that he actually does not have a heart. Horrified, he sees his opponent counterattack, leaving a cut on his body. The adult version of the protagonist sees this and shouts out the name in shock. The protagonist is cut in half. The Soul Ripper laughs and asks if he really thought that his weak point was in the heart area. The ferocious boss looks at the defeated MC and claims that one of the hallmarks of the god of the underworld is a fake weak point, which is a trick for stupid humans. The body of the main character lies on the floor. The sinister boss of the floor laughs haughtily. He holds out his bony hand as he stands next to the little henchman, calling for an adult Haruto to come over, as he is the only one left. The fighter stands next to the killed guy and exclaims that this is impossible, at the same time trying to understand what his weakness is in this case. The mighty king calmly asserts that gods have no weaknesses. If anything can compare to weakness, it is the very concept of his existence. He sends his little monsters on the attack, shouting that he doesn't need a man's pleas, so let him die. The adult version of the protagonist closes his eyes, stating that they now know everything. Behind the Soul Ripper, the protagonist appears, who says that he understands everything. Haruto calmly remains silent as the skeleton screams that this is simply impossible. Holding a sword, the guy explains to his opponent that the one he killed earlier was an ordinary clone. The slash soldier disappears. Memories are seen with an avatar split. The protagonist says that when he cut it, he created a clone using playback. The guy with blue eyes rushed to attack. MC was lying in blood, while the main character in the present tense explains that it was the real one. The fighter stands on the skeleton's neck and sword. Holding a sword to its head, it shouts that even so, he should have died after a direct blow from the sacred scythe. Haruto replies with a serious expression that the wound was definitely fatal, but before that, a rewind spell was cast on him. Earlier, the adult version of the protagonist put a hand on his shoulder. He explains that before his death, his time was rewound. They whisper that it is a very difficult skill and cannot be used twice on the same target. Haruto then says that apparently they succeeded the first time. The ferocious Soul Ripper clenches his teeth and cries out in anger. Dozens of chains bind him. The soldier stood opposite. The frightened king looks at him, being asked that they will move on to climax. Holding the monster in one position, the adult version of the protagonist asks what he said, saying that the weak point is the crown, so along with his stupid head. Two versions of Haruto confidently claim that they will absolutely destroy it. Suddenly, a yellow light illuminates the boy's face. A joyful Ria thanks her brother for everything he has done, while saying that she loves him very much. The protagonist's eyes sparkle even more than before. The main character deftly cuts off the head of the Soul Ripper, using the power of his older brother. A bright flash occurs. In anger, Haruto shreds the skull into dozens of small pieces. All of them fly apart. A monster with a severed head falls to the floor. Small summoned dolls also disappear. A tired guy walks through the arena. Smoke dissipates around. Several system windows transmit messages that the god of hell has been defeated. 124,000 experience and 35.5 million credits have been obtained. The protagonist angrily closes his eyes, a blinding light behind him. He claims that the extermination is complete. An energy ladder appears in front of the guys. The adult version invites him to go, because it's time to go to the top floor. Haruto follows him with a serious look. The guy looks at his older version. They are both silent. The excited protagonist looks at his back and asks what exactly he will look like when he grows up. He replies that he is about to hit him. MC sighs and shrugs his shoulders, stating that it would have been easier if he had helped him from the beginning. The adult version climbs the steps, explaining that this is an exceptional case, because it is not as easy as it may seem at first glance. The older protagonist goes ahead and demands to stop talking, because the space-time gap will soon appear. A man in black and gold gloves needs his fists. He escorts the protagonist, who is walking behind, while urging him to hurry. They come out to the light clouds in the blue sky. The system says that they are in the Sky Fortress on the top floor. The adult protagonist makes a face, stating that there is danger there. In the sky opposite them, a vortex of energy appears, accompanied by strange cracks. A small sparkling hole is formed there. Inside it, the protagonist's younger sister is seen floating in a dark space, Haruto exclaiming her name. The girl with her eyes closed does not respond to his call. The adult version of Haruto with a serious face declares that the breakup will be connected to this world for another 9 minutes, so you cannot rush too much. Suddenly, he takes off and moves on. The guy at this time is perplexed. The soldier turns around and remembers. In front of the main character, energy steps appear leading up. The man used the acceleration field. Haruto jumps on them, following his partner. They approach a dimensional hole in which their sister is hanging unconscious. Ria does not react to her name with her eyes closed. But suddenly he slightly opens his eyes. She sees her older brother worried in front of her. The protagonist reaches out to her and shouts that he is here. His partner stops him with his hand, explaining that everything works differently there than in this world, because only space-time magic will help here. The adult version of the protagonist flies up to the crack, stating that he will go inside and push it out with magic, and he must try to catch it. He approaches his younger sister. An adult protagonist keeps himself in the air with the help of abilities. He points his hand at Ria and begins to release energy rings. The guy is standing on the other side of the spatial crack. He holds out his hand and exclaims that it must be moved to him. Ria calls for her brother with a sad look. The main character, frowning, does not understand what is happening. Suddenly, a hole in space begins to emit a bright light, and a strange sound is heard. The protagonist asks in shock what is going on. The adult version of Haruto replies worriedly that for some reason, the crack closes too soon. The hole in the air gradually closes. The protagonist understands that this cannot happen. The younger sister is also hanging in space. The crack is rapidly closing. At this time, the grown-up protagonist is desperately trying to avoid this. He releases streams of energy, explaining to MC that he will hold back the rift using his power, and he needs to draw it out. The guy angrily replies that he understands everything. The protagonist gets into a fighting stance and begins to conjure. Blue energy rings appear around his hands. They act in concert in order to save their sister. The adult version of the protagonist nervously explains that if the gap closes on her, she will be torn apart, and if she does something wrong, she will break. The protagonist, gritting his teeth, replies that he understands everything. Ria suddenly falls down. The main character reaches for her with his hand. They shout to him that he needs to be caught. Haruto grabs her arm. She lands in his arms and exclaims with joy. MC sees his partner in the spatial crack and shouts that he is next. Let him jump back. The adult version of Haruto stares at him silently. The worried guy asks what it is, stating that he needs to hurry. The man with a slight grin claims that their paths diverge here. The amazed hero asks again. Putting his hand on his heart, the protagonist from the future claims that he has reached his limit and can no longer exist in this form. All the Chronos factor he stored inside his body was spent on holding the gap. The fighter stands in the middle of a crack in the sky, saying that he does not have the strength to return to them. The main character, in turn, objects, shouting that this simply cannot happen. Frightened, Haruto hears him calling his name. The man with a slight smile explains that he did not behave very well, because he complains a lot and makes mistakes. MC is hugging Ria, a guest from the future who says he's the kind of person who gets emotional and starts doing stupid things as soon as they get it. Streams of powerful energy plow the space. He says that he does not regret at all that he fought together with such a sincere and kind person. The adult version looks at them through the dimensional hole and says that this gap will never open again, so they need to say goodbye. The desperate protagonist stretches out his hand and shouts for him to stop, because this is impossible. The grown-up protagonist sadly claims that he trusts him with his dreams. With a smirk, he asks the guy to save this world instead of him. Haruto opened his mouth in shock at what he heard. Then he resolutely purses his lips. He puts his hand on his heart and confidently states that the fighter can leave it to him. The adult version happily says that he remembered what was said. Ria watches their conversation in amazement. The crack heals. The adult version says that she is now safe and he is happy that the lady is fine. The sad girl looks at him and asks if he is really her brother too. Haruto from the future opens his eyes wide. In his memories, his beloved little sister is having fun. The energy absorbs the joyful fighter, who smiles and tells her to welcome home. Behind the crack you can see how his image is incinerating. The gap in space closed completely. The main character holds his hand on his heart and sighs. The guy bursts into bitter tears. They stand in the middle of a long arena, surrounded only by the sky. He realizes that at the same moment he lost and found a dear person. The events take place on the same day after completing the Sky Fortress dungeon. The building of the Adventurers Academy is visible. The main character goes inside. Someone exclaims that he has finally come. Enthusiastic girls surrounded him, declaring that they had been waiting for him very much. Puzzled, the protagonist looks at them and sees the third-year girls. A short-haired student with a slight smile claims that they would like to thank him on behalf of the entire association. Joyful ladies smile, saying words of gratitude in unison. A disgruntled student declares that she is very glad that that pervert was beaten. Another adds that now no one will cry into the pillow. She happily points her hand at the main character and exclaims that he saved them, while not understanding who gave him the nickname of the plague god in the first place. The worried guy brushes it off and asks to calm down, because he just wants to live in peace. A girl in a white robe approaches them. The protagonist sees her and recognizes her. Yuzuki walks towards them with a confident gait. She immediately bows, declaring that she would like to apologize for the incident with the president. The embarrassed guy says that you shouldn't do this, because she is not to blame for anything. Yuzuki does not stop bowing, while claiming that she cannot pretend that nothing happened, because she herself will soon become the president of the council. The bespectacled student looks up, asking if he wants to work for the good of the school. She adjusts her glasses with a smile, explaining that she is recruiting a new student council and would like MC to become a warlock leader. Everyone around is dumbfounded by this news. The main character scratches his head and says that he does not want to participate in this. Yuzuki grabs his palm with both hands. She desperately asks him to join, assuring him that she will do anything to do so. Rina opens her mouth in shock as she watches this picture. Outraged, the girl tries to understand what has come over Yuzuki. A friend pulls a bespectacled girl and says that the lesson will begin soon. In a commanding tone, she claims that they will continue the conversation during lunch and that he should not go anywhere, since this is an order from the president of the council. Closing his eyes, the protagonist scratches his head. The blue sky illuminates the sunny courtyard. Haruto sits on a bench and points his finger at the system window. It lists his stats. Level 98, a swordsman class with space-time skills. He remarks that this is amazing. In the window it is written several acquired skills. He says that apparently he will not lose to anyone now. In his memories, scenes of boss battles arise. His gaze is wary. The system states that the total amount of loans is 43.5 million credits. There is a bright daytime sky above him. The main character realizes that an ordinary schoolboy should not have such an amount. He holds up a sandwich and thinks about how it sounds. Yuzuki interrupts his piece by shouting where he has gone. The girl looks around the courtyard with the students and realizes that he is not here. An angry student stands with her friends and says that she warned her not to go anywhere. Another offers to watch it in the gym. Haruto is enjoying a sandwich at this time. He gets up and is surprised at something. The guy jumps down and realizes that he needs to come up with some kind of plan in case everything continues like this. Haruto turns around, agreeing with this, then asks if there are any ideas. On the bench you can see the image of a sitting companion, but in its place it is empty. The protagonist looks back at the passing plane, realizing that it is no longer there. A residential building in the city is shown. Haruto climbs the steps. In his hands is a white package. The guy presses the numbers on the combination lock of the door. He hears with a serious look that he has come late. The little sister indignantly declares that in fact she has been waiting for him for a long time. Her expression has changed to joyful. She greets her beloved brother. The main character stands silently. He says with a big smile that her older brother has finally come home. Delicious dishes are on the table. Ria solemnly presents dinner to her brother. The surprised protagonist looks at the food, hearing that she cooked it for her beloved older brother. The girl looks at him suspiciously, asking if he really bought it at the store. The excited guy thinks that he went to the store out of habit. She stands in front of him, demanding that he stop buying unnecessary products. Ria raises her finger and says that they still live together now and they need to save money. Haruto listens to her silently. His serious look is replaced by a heartfelt smile. He agrees with her. The protagonist listens to her attentively after she addresses him. My sister smiles. She enthusiastically tells her brother to welcome home. Haruto freezes in shock. He recalls the last words of his adult version. The main character smirks in response. He looks at her with kind eyes and sincerely declares that he is very glad to be at home. The protagonist puts the bag on the table while she says that before sitting down to dinner, you need to do it. The children stand in front of the frame with family photos. They turn to mom and dad. In this picture, they are very happy. The children thank their parents for raising them, while asking to continue to watch them. Clasping their hands together, they pray. The protagonist looks at his sister. Ria notices something in surprise. A red scarf lies near the frame. She remembers that she once gave it to her. Memories from the battle arise. The girl wonders that he was with him all this time. His sister hugged him then. Haruto says it was. The smiling girl notices that it is actually June. He embarrassedly replies that he is always freezing. They sit down at the table and get ready to eat. Ria wishes him bon appetit. Happy brother and sister put their palms together. She reminds that she has prepared this for her beloved brother, who thanks her. Haruto tastes food. Ria is amazed to watch how he eats. While clarifying whether he liked it, the main character replies that it is very tasty and it is just wonderful. Brother and sister are sitting at the table. The girl clarifies whether she really returned. The protagonist states that he has submitted all the necessary documents. MC eats the greens, stating that he said that his sister was alive. She happily thanks him. A slightly dissatisfied Ria says that she has lost 2 years, so now she will have to try hard. My brother eats with pleasure, noting that he will also need to make up for it at dance school. Closing his eyes, the guy enjoys the food. The girl asks if there will be any problems with money. He replies that there is no need to worry about this. The system window shows a credit balance of 43 million. The protagonist claims that she now never needs to worry about it. She will be able to go to the dance academy even when she becomes a grandmother. She giggles, not understanding what it even means. The sister turns around in amazement. A soft toy lies nearby. She asks that all this is also thanks to him from the future. They are holding a plush toy. The guy agrees with his sister and says that they should be grateful for it. In a flashback, the dying protagonist from the future said that he trusted him with his dreams and wanted Haruto to save the world for him. The protagonist is holding a toy, not understanding how to save the world now. The girl reaches into her pocket, stating that she remembered that it was when her brother saved her. Next to her lies a magic cube emitting a bright light. Ria asks if he knows what it is. Shocked, MC looks at him and exclaims that it's a message cube. Suddenly, the artifact begins to emit brighter energy. A deadpan companion in the form of a plush toy flies out of it. Haruto is stunned by this development. But it turned out to be a hologram. The toy conveys a message that if they watch it, then it is no longer there. With a slight grin, the companion expresses confidence that the protagonist probably does not know what to do and is thinking about how to save the world without him. The main character listens to him in surprise. The assistant's hologram states that as an incomparable magician, he has prepared for such an outcome. The brilliant companion smiles, asking if he is really cool, because now he can be praised. The guys silently listen to the message. Haruto notices that he is even behaving like this there. The shocked guy hears that the assistant will send a letter from the future of the second version to his storage. The guy asks again. The toy smiles confidently, explaining that everything he needs will be there. The main character listens attentively, then he is asked if the savior understood everything. The cube glows even brighter than usual. The system window says that the letter from the future of the second version has been sent to the adventurer's Haruto vault. He is shocked to see this notification in front of him. A hologram with a companion declares that the guy should not relax, just because he is not around. The eyes of the main character reflect his smiling partner. Haruto smirks. The amazed girl looks at him and asks if he is really now called a savior. She glows with happiness, exclaiming that this is very cool. The embarrassed guy scratches his head and replies that it's nothing. The High General Staff of the Adventurers Guild is introduced. 2 heroes are at a round table on the top floor. A meeting of the wise men takes place. Kurigane's branch director grumpily suggests moving on to the next topic. A giant dragon is seen on the screen. It says about the elimination of the Dragon of Chaos at the station. High towers are shown. the director talks about unauthorized use of equipment without the necessary rank of A or higher in the branch. A fighter is standing in front of a window, talking about an illegal raid on a celestial fortress in the capital just a few days ago. Kurigane frowns and claims that there is a very high probability that all 3 violations were committed by the same person, so they urgently need to find out the identity of the perpetrator. On the wall is the number 5, corresponding to the 5th Sage Tantalum, stating that the Sky Fortress has never been explored, but the dungeon appears to have a rank of S. Against the background of the number 2, corresponding to the 2nd Sage Platinum, there is a question of whether the intruder has completed the entire dungeon alone. The 6th Sage, the noble magical swordsman Muramasa, pondered, asks that this is probably impossible. The number 3 is shown, which corresponds to the 3rd Sage Oz. Omni Elemental, the 1st Sage named Ku, states that perhaps this can be seen as a challenge to the guild. A 4th Sage named Siren laughs as he wonders what dark power he wields. The 7th Tellurium speaks of the purpose of the observation. The director angrily claims that he hopes everyone in the audience understands the importance of the situation. Frowning, he angrily states that once they find the unknown adventurer, they will make him one of the executive directors of the guild. With a slight grin, he continues to say that he will become a fighter of the upcoming war between the worlds. The 6th Sage sits in place with his arms crossed, Kurigane announcing that the meeting is over. The events take place the next day, in a tall building in the middle of a busy city. A little girl holds a balloon and walks hand in hand with her mother. The lady is inclined to the flowers on the counter. Noticing how beautiful they are, she is told that now they have a promotion, a 30% discount. A little daughter is watching a butterfly fly by in amazement. A flying creature is reflected in her eyes. While her mother is buying flowers, the girl runs out onto the road. A truck pops up in front of her, rushing at full speed. The driver is horrified to see what can happen now. The mother turns to her daughter. She opens her mouth in shock. The daughter walks along the road further. Her mother shouts for her to be careful. The child turns around and sees a speeding truck in front of him. Fear is in her eyes. Mom is sitting on the road in front of a pool of blood. She has covered her face and is holding back her crying. Suddenly, a blue spatial silhouette of the protagonist appears, holding a child in his arms. Mom looks up at him through tears. Haruto holds a frightened girl and looks at her mom. The girl runs up to them and exclaims the name of her daughter. The amazed girl sits in his arms absolutely silent. They ask her if she is scared. The protagonist with a caring smile asks not to worry, because now she is safe. She gets up on the road and thanks her savior. The mother hugs her daughter tightly and exclaims that thank God she is fine. Haruto watches it, thinking it worked out. In his memories, the guy was walking along the road and drinking soda. He realizes that when he noticed the girl, he assumed that he would not have time after all. The protagonist turned when the truck was about to catch up with the child. Chains bound the speeding machine. He deftly took the girl and now realizes that he did it thanks to the magic of space and time. With a slight smile, he recalls that then only a balloon and a drink were damaged, which spilled on the road. But compared to human life, this is nothing. Haruto touches his wrist, realizing that he saved her with his power. Mom still hugs her daughter and declares that she will thank the savior now, but the guy, in turn, objects. The girl looks at him and assures him that he saved her life, so let him at least say his name. The main character scratches his head awkwardly, stating that he would like her to pretend as if nothing happened. He understands that he would not want to stand out even more. The protagonist, holding his bag, turns around and leaves, saying that he has already run. The girl yells after him to wait. MC begins to run, realizing that he may be late now. The action takes place in the Academy of Adventurers, in the courtyard of which there is a beautiful park. At this time, the protagonist jumps on the rooftops. He lands on top of the academy. He takes the net and looks at it with a sad look. The girls downstairs discuss if Haruto has arrived, remarking that it looks like he's not there yet. The main character turns away and sighs. A guy is sitting in class, holding his notebook. Students whisper to each other. A girl with red cheeks sits and watches him. The wary protagonist writes, while thinking that he does not even need to look at the passage of time to feel all these looks. Rinna turns to look at him, feeling like he's somewhere far away, like when she met him near the guild. A skyscraper is shown, which houses the Adventurers Guild, a branch of the metropolitan government. The girl says that she is a student of the Adventurers Academy. Rinna stands in front of the worker and explains that she has passed the B-rank dungeon. The man replies that he understands and thanks her for her work. He writes with a pen on paper. While the girl says that she will go, he asks about the area at this time. The bespectacled employee looks up and asks if she knows a student named Haruto. The embarrassed student replies in a stupor that she knows. Tokimian stands at the microphone, the manager explaining that their weapons fusion lab has developed a new theory and named it after the protagonist. The man sits across from Rinna and reveals that when he asked for the name, he said that a student from her academy gave him a hint, which sounds quite strange. The girl silently averts her gaze. The main character is sitting in class. His girlfriend mentally wonders how he is. The teacher stands in front of the students, announcing that everything is for today and adds about the exchange student who will arrive next week. A resting place with benches is shown. The action takes place at lunchtime. Haruto sits quietly and looks at the envelope. A bag of food lies next to it. In his hands is a black letter from the future of the second version. The envelope is closed. It is said that first the main character needs to bring the sword to perfection, because after all, space-time magic is auxiliary. His true talent lies in the use of a blade, and if he wants to become a great magician, he needs to focus on this weapon. Haruto stares in amazement at the system window, which explains that the time will come and he will understand what it was for, but for now, that's all. The guy sprawls on the bench, noticing that he is secretive, as usual, never explains anything. The character stands on the green grass. The bespectacled guy calmly uses silent steps and instant movement. A bright flash occurs. Haruto opens his eyes in shock. He turns his head to the side and sees a soldier walking on the roof. An energy blade is formed in MC's hand. He jumps up from the bench and asks who is in front of him. A sinister long-haired guy looks at him with a predatory look, declaring that here he is. The protagonist, frowning, hears that he wants to borrow his power. An enemy in a white robe stands over him. A yellow-eyed fighter with glasses claims that the end of this world is near. Haruto holds his blade tightly, and the opponent standing in front of him declares that he wants to take the power of Anonymous. MC angrily realizes that he didn't feel his presence until he got so close. The enemy does not change the stony expression of his face. The main character evaluates him as a difficult opponent. Haruto looks at him calmly, and wonders what the end of the world means. The villain adjusts his glasses and replies that in the near future everything that the guy cherishes will turn to dust and disappear. The wary protagonist thinks about his sister and asks again. He points his blade at the villain, claiming that he cannot just believe him, because he does not know his name or who he is. The enemy is standing at the top, hearing that he just appeared and began to force something. The protagonist closes his eyes and thinks about the adult version of himself, while declaring that the stranger resembles someone and this is bad. Haruto says with a serious look that he will do what he thinks is best. The opponent angrily listens to the fact that the guy will make decisions on his own. The scoundrel grins slyly. He shows a photo with Ria, wondering what even after that. Haruto rides his face in rage. In the picture, a little girl is dancing. Everything around the main character instantly begins to blaze. He calls the enemy a freak. The villain watches his actions, realizing that he is using his fighting spirit. A powerful flow of energy forms around the protagonist. The villain notices that this is quite unusual. The bespectacled fighter smiles madly and understands that he knew that this guy had great potential. Haruto sees a standing enemy, who assures that there is no need to worry so much, as he took a photo while studying it and did not touch his sister. The opponent puts his hand on his blade and declares that he swears it with his sword. In a split second, he is right next to the protagonist. He deadpans that if he needs to face him in this battle, he will gladly do so. Haruto looks at him with hatred, claiming that he has crossed the line. The opponent deftly bounces a few meters. The main character says that anything can happen now and the villain should not regret it. The fighter takes up a dark purple katana, claiming that he was ready for it from the very beginning. Opponents stand opposite each other. They masterfully hold fighting stances. The scoundrel's glasses show glare. He uses the skill of intent to kill. The main character's eyes sparkle. He sees the purple aura of the enemy in front of him, wondering what it is, because there is no Chronos factor around him at all. A predatory opponent emitting a dark aura. Haruto is aware that he cannot see the passage of time. The warrior with a katana calmly asks if everything is okay, because the protagonist is ready or not. Now he will attack. Suddenly, the opponent's silhouette blurs. A moment later, his face is directly in front of MC. He holds the hilt of his katana and states that the killing intent skill doesn't mean creating a murderous aura and revealing all of his intentions, but quite the opposite. The villain strikes hard with his sword, claiming that it means killing the aura and presence. The guy sees a flying blade with a twisted face. Haruto jumps away from the scene of the fight, realizing that his ability is hiding the Chronos factor around him. The main character stands in front of his opponent and asks why he tells him about his skills, as if he is pretending to be a villain from a manga. The tip of the katana emits purple smoke. He says that he says this for a reason. With a sinister look, the opponent claims that in any case he will be the winner. In a second, the villain is behind the protagonist, while managing to say that if you hide your presence, victory will be only a matter of time. Haruto turns around in horror. Frowning, the scoundrel makes a quick movement with his blade. He deals a powerful blow to the main character. With a slight grin, the guy realizes that he is caught. The silhouette of the main character dissolved. Barnacle jumped away, not understanding what was happening. At this point, Haruto is already behind us, using avatar playback. He cut the air sharply with his sword. The enemy managed to dodge, wondering what it was. The student advanced, forcing the opponent to move away. The brunette frowned and clattered in displeasure. Muramasa jumped to the side. He narrowed his eyes, thinking that he was going to hurt the young man. Was it really not just an afterimage? A button flew off his jacket. The main character applied acceleration and found himself in front of the enemy. He gripped the hilt of his blade and his eyes flashed. Barnacle froze, realizing the true strength of his opponent. He smirked and thought it was interesting. The rivals crossed swords. They looked at each other, and sparks emanated from the blades. Muramasa smiled, wondering what the young man would do next. The adventurer frowned, thinking about what to do if the passage of time was not visible. Flashes flew from the blades. Suddenly, blue chains created by the hero appeared around. They forged swords. The brunette clenched his hand into a fist, concentrating his energy. The opponent lowered his gaze in surprise. Haruto dove in and prepared to attack. He swung and used his chrono fist. Glasses rounded his eyes. The man quickly let go of his weapon. He then crossed his arms and activated the steel body. A bright light appeared from the blow of the young man. The shock waved through the opponent back. He grouped, and smoke was coming from his clothes. Muramasa narrowed his eyes, trying to figure out what it was. His glasses reflected the main character, and the man thought that he was the awakened one. Haruto frowned in displeasure and gritted his teeth. He lowered his hands, annoyed that even the last attack was useless. The student rounded his eyes and asked again when his opponent said that this was enough. The man nodded and straightened up. He stepped closer, apologizing for what he had said about his sister. Glasses bowed and apologized for the deliberate attack, and this would not happen again. The hero looked at him in surprise and asked again. Muramasa raised his blade and declared that he would now go. The young man stretched out his hand and asked why he decided all this himself, although the match was not over. The interlocutor turned around and agreed with this, but added that they would continue at his school. Haruto looked confused, not understanding what he meant. The man stopped and said that the guy had a unique talent, however, he was still weak and had not reached the level he should be. Barnacle Boy didn't turn around, saying that the hero must learn the secrets of the sword at his school in order to become stronger. Haruto flinched as he remembered how the future had told him that his true talent lay in the wielding of a sword, and if he wanted to become a great mage, he must first learn how to wield a blade. The young man knitted his eyebrows and reminded him that he couldn't just blindly trust a stranger. The interlocutor adjusted his glasses and noted with a smirk that he was definitely stronger than him now, so wasn't that enough? The brunette frowned. Muramasa put his hand in his pocket and said that he would be waiting for him at school. Then he quickly disappeared. The main character looked down. Then he took a piece of paper out of his pocket. He deployed permission for the exchange of students between his academy and the Azabu school, and he was amazed that his opponent slipped the paper during the battle. Blank shook in the hands of the young man, who realized what his opponent meant. He crumpled the paper furiously and exclaimed that he was an annoying fellow. Glasses looked at the roof of the building, thinking about the main character. The man remembered the moments of their battle and admitted that the young man was good. Muramasa twisted the button in his hands, then squeezed it, and decided that before the 7 wise men used him as their 6, he would train the guy. The brunette knitted his eyebrows and thought that later, after joining their organization, he would force him to carry out a coup and take their power for himself. The swordsman frowned at the thought of his colleague and promised himself that he would interfere with Kurigane. A crumpled sheet lay on the floor. Haruto stared at him thoughtfully as he thought about his exchange training. He sat on a bench, studying the requirements and conditions. Then the young man turned to the noise. Yuzuki appeared in front of him, shouting that she had found him, and that today he would definitely join the student council. The interlocutor stood up and replied that it was just in time. The guy smiled and said that he agreed. The student froze in shock. She stared and asked. A week later, the Adventurers Agency, a branch of Azabu. The main character was walking down the street with Yuzuki, and she said that he impressed her. The girl smiled and admired that the guy not only joined the student council, but also wanted to go with her to study at the Azabu school. The brunette grinned and replied that it was natural, because he was now a member of the student council, and it was his duty. The hero looked away and thought that it was just written on a piece of paper that members of the student council were entitled to special buns. The companions looked at the training court, and the girl noted that many S-rank adventurers graduate from Azabu school, and it is considered the best school in Japan. They moved on, and Yuzuki added that only 3% of those who want to get here, the best of the best. She turned around and exclaimed with anticipation that they had to try to keep up. The students went inside. Hall was striking in its scale and technology. The girl folded her hands and said that first she needed to say hello to the chairman. The main character frowned and looked away. People around him whispered, and the young man guessed that everyone was wondering where the 2 strangers came from. The brunette closed his eyes and decided that there was no point in worrying about it, and they would solve problems as they came. The companion stopped and opened her mouth. She smiled awkwardly and assured that there was no need to worry, because they were together. The young man nodded, looking at her, and wondered if she was really okay. The heroes approached the chairman's office on the 20th floor. The girl knocked and asked permission to enter. Inside, a man was sitting at the table, who said that he was waiting for them. Muramasa grinned and introduced himself. The main character awkwardly lowered his gaze, realizing who was in front of him. The man stood up silently. He stood in front of the children and greeted them at the Azabu school. Barnacle introduced the students and told them that in their time, when mages are considered the cream of society, they teach only the use of a sword. He visualized the fight and added that even in the Adventure Agency, there were no more adventurers, and instead of magic duels, sword fights were held here. The swordsman came closer. Muramasa leaned over to the young man and said that during their studies in this program, they would climb the rankings with the help of duels. They looked at each other. The girl looked anxiously at the chairman and exclaimed that nothing of the kind should be in the program. Haruto knitted his eyebrows and asked if he could fight the man again. He turned around and replied that the first place in the top was given the right to fight with the strongest person in his school, with him. The young man clenched his fist and said that he would quickly get to the first place and defeat him. The guy looked resolutely at the chairman and added that the sooner he did it, the sooner he would go home. He remembered their fight and said that he didn't like that their fight ended halfway. The girl stared dumbfounded at her companion, who said that when they brought him to the end, he would have no reason to stay here. Muramasa smiled and agreed. The brunette knitted his eyebrows as the man said that whatever the purpose and attitude, this school respects swordsmen who strive to come first. Barnacle Boy opened a virtual window. Notices appeared in front of the students, and the chairman explained what he was giving them student IDs and schedules so they could use the school equipment and classrooms. And of course, they would be given first-class access. A characteristic appeared in front of the young man with the swordsman's course and level. He rubbed his chin, thinking that if the grading system worked the same way here, then he should challenge the students higher in the top to a duel. The director put his hand on his chest and wished the guys good luck. The companions went out into the corridor, and the girl muttered that this was an unusual turn of events. She looked at her friend in a panic and exclaimed that she would not succeed, since she would not be able to claim the first place, to which the guy replied that she did not need it from the very beginning. Haruto knitted his eyebrows and thought that the fastest way to climb was to go to where high-ranking disciples gathered. The brunette smirked as he explored the locations and decided to go there first. The cafeteria of the Adventurers Academy. The girl looked at the hero and asked if he had forgotten to eat breakfast, to which the young man absent-mindedly agreed. A silhouette appeared next to them, clarifying whether they were exchange students from another part of Japan. The maid's projection smiled and said that their school's motto was, "Breakfast determines your entire day, so all students should eat well." She looked at them and added that in the dining room you can eat as much as you want, and the brunette assumed that this hologram sees their student and plays targeted offers. There were plenty of dishes on the tables, and Yuzuki was amazed that all this yummy was free. Students were filling their plates, and the girl muttered that things were different in rich schools. The girl took the tool and said that they needed to inspect everything here. She looked around, admiring the complete automation and the perfectly balanced menu, and they needed that at school, too. The main character scratched his head and thought that the new president of the student council was very eccentric. He closed his eyes and decided to mind his own business. The guy looked away, hearing a sharp sound and the phrase that someone had something that he did not deserve. A group of students was standing nearby. The young man with bangs stretched out his hand and asked him to stop. The offender opened the katana and said that in his hands it would turn into garbage, although the blade is very sharp. The apprentice came closer and asked for it, but the interlocutor exclaimed that this was his punishment for sitting in the raid of faction seats without permission. The main character arched his eyebrows and noted that no matter how elite the school is, there will always be such garbage, and teachers cannot keep track of everyone. The guy moved in their direction, thinking that school canteens are one of the most frequent places of bullying, and he was lucky that he ran into them so quickly, but he would finish quickly. The hooligan grinned and said that those with a rank less than a 2-digit number should not go to the canteen. The young man was sweating and hesitantly replied that it didn't matter who was sitting where. The offender grabbed him by the jacket and shouted that it was important. He grinned and called the guy a plague god with 0 skills. Hearing this nickname, Haruto shuddered. The hooligan pushed the young man to the floor. Everyone stood around, but did nothing. The main character closed his eyes and thought that it was time to intervene. The guy raised his sword and said that the disciple clearly didn't need one, so he would keep it, and his friends added that such a thing could be sold at a higher price, so their faction's budget would skyrocket. The student waved his hand and said that the interlocutor was free and could walk, but he demanded to give it back. The young man stretched out his hand and shouted that his father had given him this blade. The interlocutor stopped smiling and exhaled. He swung his fist and said that he did not care about his family. The boy turned away and gritted his teeth. The sound of a blow was heard, and the young man opened his eyes in surprise. Haruto caught the bully's fist. He sweated and asked who he was, horrified that he had been stopped with one hand. The main character narrowed his eyes and introduced himself, saying that he was looking for a student who ranked first in the top. The interlocutor frowned and shouted that he was not going to prompt, but the hero sharply squeezed his fingers. The student screamed and fell to the floor, and the brunette asked to answer quickly, adding that asking an emotional person is the fastest way to find out something. The hooligan's comrades looked at him in surprise, asking what he had done. Haruto frowned and repeated his question threateningly. The interlocutor sweated and gritted his teeth. Suddenly, the hero froze, feeling an invisible movement, and in order to stop, the young man noticed a blade near him. He jumped back sharply. The brunette knitted his eyebrows, wondering what it was. A guy with a group of people approached from the side, demanding not to mock his brothers. The student narrowed his eyes and introduced himself as the leader of the Reidu Nobunaga faction. In front of the hero was a third-year student, who ranks third among the swordsmen of the Azabu school and is the head of the Kishin fencing school. The jacket rested casually on his shoulders, and the young man remembered that even though the administration didn't know what to do about his bad behavior, his true skills were close to the first place in the rank, as well as that candidate for the position of a teacher after graduation. The student with bangs stared, not believing that such a person was now in a similar situation with an exchange student. Haruto put his hands in his pockets, looking at the stranger. The long-haired man squinted at the wards and asked how it happened. The protagonist pointed to the young man behind and said that his bro had bullied this boy, so he had to stop him. The interlocutor frowned. He turned around and asked if it was true. The hooligan sweated and began to deny, assuring that they just wanted to take seats for the faction. The man took a step forward. Nobunaga struck one of them sharply in the face. The hero rounded his eyes in surprise. All three thugs were lying beaten on the floor, and their leader noted that their eyes run when they lie. He picked up the katana from the floor. Then he bowed and apologized for the inconvenience caused on behalf of the entire faction. Haruto nodded and replied that it was okay. The long-haired man handed the sword to the young man and asked him to take it. He accepted the weapon and thanked him. The swordsman smiled and repeated that he was sorry. The main character stared at the student in confusion, surprised that their leader was so honest and straightforward. He stood up and muttered that he would very much like to just apologize and go about his business. He knitted his eyebrows and added that in this case, part of the faction would be destroyed. The guy exchanged glances with the main character and challenged him to a duel. The young man with bangs was alarmed and advised to refuse, since this man is in third place in the top. Haruto looked at his interlocutor resolutely and said that he gladly accepted the challenge. The long-haired man smiled and replied that it would be easier. He turned around and said that he would be waiting for him in the arena after class. The brunette looked after him. The rescued man approached him and asked if everything would be fine. He was shaking when he said that his opponent was in third place, and it was stupid to fight with him. The main character closed his eyes and replied that he himself was stupid. Haruto looked at the student sternly and asked if he was satisfied with everything. The interlocutor lowered his head when the guy threatened that these freaks would mock him throughout the school. He shrank and muttered that they would soon get tired if they did not react. His katana emitted a glow. The main character shuddered in surprise. His eyes widened. The weapon radiated energy. Haruto pointed his finger at the blade and stated that he was asking for the real one, who was here. He knitted his eyebrows and clarified what the young man had done when the sword was stolen. The interlocutor sweated and asked again. The young man squeezed his katana while the hero said that his body was moving on its own, although he was aware that the opponents were stronger. The brunette remembered his battles and asked again if the student was satisfied with everything. The young man lowered his head. He clenched his weapon and muttered that he didn't want this to continue. The guy looked at the hero and exclaimed that he wanted to take revenge on them. The disciple raised his fist and added that he would not allow them to touch his sword again. Haruto reached out with a smile and asked what his name was. They sealed the acquaintance with a handshake, and the interlocutor introduced himself as Mitsurugi Ibuki. The main character looked at him seriously and said that he also needed to challenge someone to a duel. He remembered the hooligan and advised him to choose a guy who took the blade from him. The adventurer put his hand on his shoulder and asked him not to worry, assuring him that he would make sure that he won, and then they would enjoy the taste of victory together. Ibuki looked at the interlocutor in confusion and replied that he understood. Haruto lowered his gaze as he heard the beep. He pulled out a phone with a message from the president asking where he had gone while she was eating. The brunette sighed, amazed at her spontaneity. After school, waiting room. Yuzuki pointed to the hero and asked what he was thinking about when he was going to the duel on the first day. The guy raised his hands, trying to calm her down. The brunette looked away and muttered that it would take a long time to tell, but this did not suit the girl. The adventurer made a gesture with his hand and reminded them that the chairman had told them to try to take first place, so he decided that it would be quicker to start with a duel with third place. The president theatrically touched her forehead, shocked at how easily he talks about it. The hero closed his eyes and said that taking first place to fight Muramasa and send him home immediately was his plan. Ibuki turned to the guy and asked if he really thought he could do it. The young man turned around and added that there was always a chance. He smiled and said that if the hero managed to defeat the chairman, it would be the first time at the Azabu school. The student waved his hand and muttered that perhaps the brunette would even get the legendary skill cube. Ibuki introduced the silhouette, and when asked by Haruto, he revealed that Kiryu Kagemitsu, the founder of the school, understood and mastered the secrets of the sword and placed them in his skill cube. The main character rounded his eyes. He remembered the bespectacled boy who advised him on how to learn these skills at his school. The brunette knitted his eyebrows and asked what it was. The other person touched his chin and replied that it was a unique sword skill that only the chairman could master, // Haruto's eyes widened. He jumped up and asked again. The guy sweated and asked if it could be used to cut the measurements. The young man nodded and said that they said so, but no one had ever seen him in person. The main character stared at him intensely. An image of his future self popped up in his mind, and he thought that this technique could help save him. Haruto frowned and said that there was another reason to win. The guy clenched his fist. He smiled and said that he was full of motivation. Then he turned around. Ibuki lifted his head in surprise when the hero said that he would open the show. The interlocutor nodded and replied that he would try. The young man smiled stiffly and admitted that the hooligan laughed heartily when he challenged him to a duel. Ibuki leaned back and asked what about his secret plan to ensure victory. Haruto looked at him and told him to just do as he said, and then he would definitely win. The brunette stretched out his hand and asked to be allowed to look at his sword. Some time later, the arena of the Azabu school. Jubilant students were sitting in the stands. On the platform, Ibuki and his offender stood opposite each other. The opponent took out a blade and asked where this idiot had the courage to challenge him to a duel. The hooligan grinned and promised that he would not leave a living place on it. The young man was sweating, but said nothing. Yuzuki, who was sitting next to the hero in the stands, looked at him and asked if everything would be fine. The guy smirked and replied that there was nothing to worry about. Ibuki looked excited but collected. The hero looked at him and said that everything would work out. Earlier, he stood in front of the young man and said that as soon as the duel began, he would immediately turn his sword and strike one accurate blow without hesitation. The interlocutor tilted his head and asked if this was really all. The brunette nodded. Haruto made a gesture with his hand and warned that his opponent was likely to mock him from the start, because he saw the young man as a small fry. Ibuki squeezed his katana and nodded. He ran the handle over the handle, listening that if the enemy controlled the situation, he would be frightened and unable to do anything, and so the hooligan thought. The main character looked at the interlocutor and said that this is what they are using in their direction. The student's eyes widened in surprise. Haruto exchanged glances with him and said that he can't miss, he needs to look ahead and just throw a punch. The student looked at the hero in confusion, who stated that this would be enough to win. The brunette put his hand on his chest and asked her to trust him. Ibuki put the sword on his knees and said that he understood. He looked at the hero enthusiastically and said that he trusted him. Now Haruto was smiling from the stands, mentally cheering the young man. Ibuki took a fighting stance. The arena was watched from above. It was the chairman. Ibuki exchanged glances with his opponent, gritting his teeth, after which the duel was announced. The opponents stood opposite each other. Ibuki, a Class 2F swordsman occupying the 3,424th place, stood motionless. His opponent, Kinji Kentaro in 153rd place, smirked and suggested that they proceed. He arched an eyebrow and said that he would continue to be friends with him after his victory. The young man lowered his head, holding a pause. The student clenched his fist and replied that he understood. Ibuki lifted his chin and demanded, if he won, that this piece of shit should not climb up to him again. The interlocutor frowned and was offended by such impudence. The main character chuckled contentedly. The young man pursed his lips and sweated. His hand rested on the handle. The student took a fighting stance, concentrating his energy, and then the signal was given to start. The bully thrust his hand into the subspace. Then he pulled out his blade. Kentaro pointed the gun at the guy. Haruto smiled and muttered that with the two swords technique, this guy was either very good or a complete idiot. The swordsman rushed to attack. Kentaro remembered the main character and noted that, as he said, the opponent immediately rushed to attack as soon as the start of the duel was announced. The young man looked at the enemy and reminded himself not to take his eyes off his opponent under any circumstances. His pupils narrowed. Kentaro grabbed his sword and unleashed his energy. A precise blow sliced through the air in front of him. The opponent stared at him in surprise. Kentaro hurriedly crossed the blades for the block, realizing that he hadn't even seen the movement. Suddenly the blades were cut. A powerful beam threw the enemy back into the wall. Kentaro hit his back and coughed. His friends turned pale in surprise. Nobunaga arched an eyebrow and sighed. Ibuki was breathing heavily as the host declared him the winner. Yuzuki turned to the hero and happily exclaimed that the young man had won. Haruto smirked and replied that he knew it because his sword was magical. The girl opened her mouth and asked. The brunette remembered how he had used the Eye of Time to evaluate the weapon some time ago. An aura emanated from the blade, and the guy guessed that it had a rare effect. Ibuki clutched the weapon in his hands, and the hero noted that, unlike him, the young man possessed magic, but all of it was absorbed by this sword. The katana was very sharp, but it had another special feature: it released all energy at the same time. The young man remembered the apprentice's duel and thought about the fact that he had been carrying this sword for 3 years, but had never fought, so all the power gathered in it was waiting for its exit. The young man sheathed the blade, and Haruto noticed that for some reason he had not been told that he had a magic sword. The brunette smirked and muttered that victory is victory. Ibuki happily ran up to the hero and exclaimed that he had won thanks to him. He smiled and asked what was going on around him after his arrival. The interlocutor grinned and replied that it was all thanks to his own strength, and he decided to tell him about the sword another time. The guy turned around. Haruto put his hands in his pockets and said it was his turn. In the evening, he stood opposite his rival in the arena. The chairman watched carefully from above. Nobunaga scratched his head and warned that he would allow himself not to hold back. He straightened his hair and added that the honor of the Reida faction was at stake. The main character smiled and replied that he would only be glad. Both opponents clenched the hilts of their blades. The students drew their swords and looked at each other. They stood opposite each other, waiting for the signal to start.